Hello everyone. My name is Dave Casuto, instructor for Learn It, and welcome to our Intro to InDesign class. Well, I bet you're wondering, what will I learn in this class? What does this class have to offer? Well, we are just going to start from the basics, understanding the InDesign workspace, move on to creating new documents from scratch, to drawing and manipulating shapes, then moving on to applying color, understanding and implementing basic and complex typography. And then we're going to get into a fun series of lessons on placing images, image editing, and text wrapping images. We'll then do a deep dive into paragraph, character, and object styles, an absolute must for any level. And once we're done with those, we explore the amazingly valuable master pages. And then finally, we learn about how to export and package our documents for publishing. Now, this course is designed to be an interactive, hands-on course. So occasionally, you'll hear me say, pause the video and practice on your own. So make sure you download the class files from the link below to do so. This will ensure you get the most out of the course and learn the program in a more experiential, hands-on manner. I look forward to teaching you all the cool things that InDesign has to offer, so stay tuned and get ready to learn. If you're enjoying these videos, please like and subscribe. If you want to earn certificates and digital badges, please become a member of our Patreon. The link is in our video description. If you have any questions you want answered by one of our instructors, please join our off-site community. The link is in the description as well. And as I mentioned, this course does have exercise files, and you'll find them in the video description below. Let's begin by first understanding what InDesign actually is. Technically speaking, InDesign is known as a layout program. So we can lay out text and images and graphics to make books, to make magazines, posters, newsletters, brochures, proposals, annual reports. So we can see here as an example, just everything just kind of laid out with all of our content that we may be using other programs to create the collateral to put into this. So in other words, we have InDesign that takes all of the content that we may have created in Photoshop, that we may have created a logo inside of Illustrator, and we brought it into InDesign to create our books, to create our magazines. Okay, where Illustrator is designed for illustration, for creating graphics using vector-based technology to draw out a logo, draw out some animations, and things like that. So if we go over to here to any of these here, you can see some of these images were doctored up inside of Photoshop and then brought into InDesign. Okay, and you can see how I can make a nice little magazine. But a lot of these things were done inside of another program and then brought into InDesign. Okay, so again, could be a book, could be a magazine, could be a poster, things like that. But a lot of the work was done in Photoshop. Now, that said, InDesign does have a lot of tools that Photoshop has a lot of the tools that Illustrator has. Not as many, but there is some kind of Venn diagram-y sort of overlap between all three programs. So we could do some things to this photograph if we wanted to make it, like have a special effect on there, have a shadow on it, we can put a shape around it and all that good stuff. And then if we wanted to actually draw out some vector graphics inside of InDesign, we absolutely can do that. All right, so we do have, again, some overlap between all three, but ultimately you can see here that this is multiple pages and it's designed to be laying things out like this, to have individual pages on here with headers and footers and maybe an index and a table of contents and things like that. So it will differ from the other Adobe programs, giving us that type of functionality. All right, so we're going to be exploring everything you need to know within InDesign, or at least in this beginner's class. It will be an advanced class after this, but we're going to be exploring kind of what those differences are, what the benefits are, what the power of InDesign is as well. But I want to just at least kind of get some definitions out of the way so you understand kind of what's not what, and what tools are used to accomplish what goals. All right, so stay tuned and we will start our first lesson. Let's begin by understanding the interface and the workspace that InDesign provides for us. So we can really sort of understand what we're looking at, what things are called, how we can customize things, move them around, and kind of take ownership over the program. Now, this is probably going to change for you as you move throughout the program, as you start to develop more learning. But let's just see what we're looking at first. Now, you'll notice over here in the upper right, I have something that says Essentials. This is the name of the workspace that I am currently in. This is what InDesign has given to me, right, as a workspace I can work with. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and you can see I have a number of different workspaces I can go through depending on what projects I'm working on. And these are all just things that InDesign has given me, okay? Now, if you're in Essentials and yours does not look like mine, go ahead and click on the drop-down and choose Reset Essentials. So then everything looks like how mine is looking at. So you're going to see here, we're going to do this because I want everybody to more or less be on the same page for the rest of our lessons. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to start customizing this. Some of these things we want, some of these things we don't. Some of these things we want to look a little bit different. We want to have them someplace else. So what I'm going to teach you next is really going to help you really understand how you can take ownership of this program, but also guess what? When you start working with Photoshop, Illustrator, and some of the other Adobe programs, you'll see that manipulating and taking ownership of the workspaces is essentially going to be the same process. So the first thing I'm going to work with is this guy over here, which is my tools panel. And I'm going to find that little dude right there, that little double-sided arrow, and I'm just going to go ahead and click on it. Why? Because I'd rather have this to be, instead of one column, 2 columns. We're going to be exploring a whole chunk of these here, so hang tight with that. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to come over here to the right-hand side where we have these other panels. We have our Properties panel, we have our Pages panel, we have our CC Library, and nothing much, frankly, after that. So I need to add on some more, I need to take away some other things on here. So let's say, for example, I don't want the CC libraries, okay? Not really relevant for me right now. So very simply, all I do is right click on it, and you'll notice a whole bunch of options comes up. I'm gonna click on close because I don't need that anymore. Okay, I'm gonna show you how we can get it back, so don't worry about it. And you'll notice here I only have pages and I have properties. Okay, click on that, activates that, click on that, that activates that. All right, so very straightforward. Now, those are all the panels I currently have, but I know I want to use a lot more than this in the future. So where do all my panels live? They live inside of the window. Okay, you can see here is window up on top. All right. And when I click on window, you will see all of the panel options I have available. Now you can see it's nicely organized in alphabetical order. Love that. And you will see that a lot of these have little submenus here. So like color has a lot of extra things in there. You'll see also, so does object and layout. So does styles, a big thing that we're going to be talking about here. You'll see that type and table also have a lot of things in there. So keep an eye out for these because in case you're not seeing what you want, there's a good chance it's kind of hiding here. All right, so what are some things that I may want to bring up? So I definitely are going to be working with styles. So I'm going to click on styles and I'm going to choose paragraph styles. And this pops up for me and it's just kind of floating there. All right, that's pretty cool. That's fine. I'm going to deal with that later. I'll go here to window and let's say I want to work with color later on. I'm going to click on color. Oh, and that does something interesting. You'll notice here is now a new set of panels, right? So it's docking here as like little icons. So we'll deal with that in just a second. And maybe let's do some more here. Let's go back to our window and I'm going to bring up links. And guess what? That docks that over here as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and minimize this by clicking on this double arrow. And let's see now how we can now customize this. How can we kind of make this our own? So for example, this is just kind of floating here, not really practical for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this whole grouping over here because notice how when I brought in paragraph style, it also brought in character style, which I definitely want. So watch what I do when I drag this up on top and I'm just going to move it and look for this little blue halo. See, get a blue halo here, maybe a blue halo here. Maybe when I dock it with these guys here, maybe I can go way to the bottom, look for another one. See, very subtle. See, there's that blue halo there. I'm just going to go to that first set I saw with the square and drop it. And there it is. Very cool. All right. Next thing I'm going to do is bring pages over here to the left, just drag that over. Cool, right? Super easy to do, no problem. All right, so let's just say, for example, I want to bring my links over there next to properties. I can very easily do that. Drop it in there, wait for my blue halo. Great, nice. Bring that back to layers, okay? Bring layers back over to here. Okay? And you'll practice this, right? You'll see how easy this is to do and really how vital it is as well. All right, I'm going to come back here to pages. And then with pages, I want this to be all by itself. So what I'm going to do is drag the pages tab way to the bottom. Watch this. See that? Blue halo, let go. And now, see that? I've now created a whole new segmentation for my workspace. Love that. That's great. This is how I'm going to do things. Now you'll also notice how I can resize if I want to. Great. Don't have a lot of layers here. So I can go ahead and make this nice and big. So therefore I can see all my pages. Okay. So customize this however you want to. For this exercise and for this class, we'll be doing it a particular way. But of course, be comfortable with whatever you need. Okay. Now I'm going to go over here to Window and I'm going to bring in the Control panel. So let's go ahead and click on that. And you'll see something new now appears here. This is incredibly, incredibly important. Making sure to have this open at all times. Okay, so again, go over here to Window and then bring up the Control panel. The Control panel and the Properties panel, they actually do overlap a little bit. So just keep in mind you can use both of these. I'll be using both of these throughout this class, but just know that there's some overlap and they both have some really nice utility. Okay, now I love what I've done here and I have outgrown Essentials, right? So thank you very much for giving me a foundation. So what I'm going to do next is just save my workspace as my own. So I'm going to click on this little drop down. I'm going to skip all these, thanks but no thanks. I'm going to say new workspace and just give it a name. Okay, I'm just going to call this Dave's Faves. Okay, and then notice here, what am I capturing? Panel location, menu customization, wonderful. I click OK and great, there it is. Now it says Dave's Faves up there. Now let's see this in action, right? So I bring my layers panel over here, right? I accidentally close out my pages, right? I'm just making a mess of things, right? Everything is just, man, I'm a mad scientist at work. What do I do? Okay, I can certainly go back to Window and bring some of these things back, but what I'm gonna do is just reset Dave's Faves. I like to call this the Mary Poppins effect, right? Where it's like Mary Poppins is like, put your toys away, place for everything and everything in its place, right? She wiggles her broom or whatever she does, and then bam, everything's back in its place. So watch this. I click on Dave's Faves, and then I'm going to reset Dave's Faves. And watch this. Everything goes right back to where it was. Place for everything, everything in its place. All right, so this is essentially where we're going to be starting off. And then we'll be giving you a tour and then some for the next exercise. All right, and you're going to be getting more and more of a tour as we go throughout. What I want you to do right now is just pause the video and then practice doing what we've done here, right? Where I want you to actually create your own workspace similar to mine, but really get an understanding and a feeling of how you can manipulate all these different panels. Right? You can move them around, you can minimize them, you can do all the different things that you want. Right? And then go ahead and save it as your own. All right? So enjoy, and we'll see you in just a bit. Now that we have a good idea of how we can work with the interface and the workspaces, let's go a little bit deeper into some other components so we really understand kind of what's what and where things are and all that good stuff here. So let's just start off just by going way to the bottom here, where we can see a few little elements down here. All right, so the first thing we're going to look at here is our zoom levels. Okay, so how far are we zoomed in on the page? Okay, cool, that's helpful. All right, maybe sometimes you want to zoom to be able to see something, zoom out to be able to see everything. Other thing we have here is going to be our page number. What page are we currently on? Okay, great. You can go ahead and navigate throughout the page going backwards and forward. You can also go all the way back to the beginning if you want to, etc. So let's just go ahead and see this in action. I can click on this and I can go, bam, 100%. And then I can go over to here to 25%. Great. Now I'm going to show you some good shortcut keys for all these things in just a little bit. Okay, but now let's go ahead and see how we can go from page to page you can see, bam, I can go to page 18. I can go to page 35. Okay, just like that. All right, so great. Whatever works for you. Now, eventually you might start working with the Pages panel to be able to do that. But this is just an understanding how you can go directly to a page, especially when you have these big documents like that. Now, of course, you can use these little arrows here, go backwards, forwards, and you click on this first one, that takes you all the way to the beginning. Click on the last one, that takes you all the way to the end. And we go right back to the beginning. Look at that, I just went up, how many millions of pages there? Great, no problem. Now, the next thing I want you to focus on is this thing. This is very, very important because you're going to want to be looking at this thing at all times to kind of take a look like, uh-oh, what's going on? It's basically telling you, okay, how many errors might you have here, okay? And if you double click on it, what it does is it opens you up to this thing called the pre-flight panel. And it's going to tell you what, in fact, these errors are. It's telling me that I have 57 link errors, okay? There are missing links on all these. Uh-oh, that's no good. So as you're going throughout the program, as you're creating things, you want to make sure you have no errors, and we're going to be able to explore how we can rectify these, or simply just ignore them if it's not an issue for you. Okay, but always keep an eye on these. All right, so that's going to be very important. Again, just simply double click on it to then open it up to see, what's going on under the hood, essentially. All right, now, InDesign not too long ago introduced the Properties panel. So if you click on the Properties panel and just drag it out over to here so we can see kind of what's what, you're going to see currently, because I have nothing selected, I am looking at the properties of my entire document. If I click on an image, I am now looking at the properties of that particular image. Look at that. And I get to do all these things, not only learn about something, but also control it, make some changes to it. Let's go over to here to this text. Notice how everything changes, right? Notice I have character and text styles and appearance for that. And you can also see I have fonts and all that stuff. So this is going to be really, really helpful for you working with the Properties panel to be able to identify what's going on as you're clicking on things to understand what's what. Now, again, I want to make it very clear that when I click on nothing, I get the properties for the entire document. Do you see that there? It says no selection, and then document, how big this is, my margins, all that stuff. Incredibly valuable to be able to actually make some changes on a kind of a global level that affects the whole document. All right. The other thing you'll see is that if I click on an image, I'll notice that up here where I have my control panel, that also will change. Okay, let me do that one more time for my type. And you can see I double click on my type to get in there, and then notice how it's giving me some familiar options like my font and my font size, and maybe you're familiar with leading and tracking and all that stuff. If not, you will be very soon. All right, so just some things to kind of just interface, as you're going along here. Now, the next thing I want to show you is the ability to kind of take away some of these little lines here. These lines are super helpful to a certain degree, but many times you don't want them at all. So I'm going to give you a nice little shortcut key, which is just simply the W key, right? I'm going to do a capital W, so you have that's important. And also you want to do Shift plus W. So what do those do? Let's take a look. I'm just going to hit W right now, and notice how all my lines go away. I'm going to zoom in, right? And you can zoom in either by doing Command Control plus plus if you like, or I like to use, if I'm using a mouse, the Alt or Option and then just scroll with my scroll wheel. So I'm doing that, right? Or you can just do Command or Control plus and minus. Now I'm going to hit W again, and you can see here all my lines come back, like my margins and my column separations, okay? And then my text boxes and my boxes around my images, all that stuff. Now, what does Shift W do? Shift W takes me to presentation mode. And this is awesome. And I'm just using my arrow keys to go through it. Great, this looks amazing. I hit escape and I'm right back out. And then I'm hit the W again just so I can see all my demarcations, so I can be a little more perfectionist about it, seeing all my grids and guides and everything like that. Now, if you're not a keyboard shortcut person, you can see how you can do the same thing with this little guy right here if you want to. So if you click on that, you right click, excuse me, you're going to see here is preview, and then here is presentation mode. So I click on that, does the same thing. I can Click preview again. All right, and that comes right back to that. And I'm going to hit W, get my lines back. Come back to here. Come back to here. Great. Wonderful. All right. So incredibly helpful to be able to preview a document as you want to be able to see it, not all that stuff here. And then one last thing I'm going to tell you, and this is telling you this because this happens to the best of us. Sometimes you want to have all your toolbars to kind of go away for a split second. And sometimes it happens by accident. So what is making it do it? Okay, if you just hit the tab key right now, just literally hit the tab key, watch what's going to happen. Oops, why did it do that, right? Total freak out moment. Hit tab again, and it comes right back. Tab, tab. Okay, sometimes that's cool because you're pretty much like getting to see everything, but you don't need all those panels there. Hit tab again, and they come right back. All right, so experiment with that, get a feel for it, practice your zooming in, your zooming out, practice working with presenting in such a different way, right? Looking at your properties panel, working with your tools, get a feel for the program because it can be a little bit intimidating, a little bit complicated seeming, but the more you kind of work with all this stuff in the beginning, it'll really help you kind of not go crazy and really kind of tame the beast that can be InDesign. But very soon it's going to feel very, very intuitive for you. All right, so pause the video, practice that, and we're going to come back in the next video and we're going to start by creating a brand new document and see what all the parameters are around that and have fun. See you in the next lesson. We're now going to create our first original document based on whatever specifications we want. Now, when you open up InDesign, you'll see a whole bunch of choices in terms of what you want to create, how you want to create it, what size, etc. So if we look up on top here, you will see we have a few different tabs. We also have potentially some recent items, and you'll also have some templates that you can work from as well. Pretty darn good templates, actually. But let's go ahead and just check out what we have here. So under recent, these are recent things that I've worked on. You can see different sizes. We'll get into what some of these units of measure mean in just a second. Here are going to be some saved templates that I've worked with, actually some presets that I have saved, right? Maybe it's different pages, different number of columns, all that stuff. And here are some other presets, like if you're going to be doing print, they have these other preset sizes, and then you can check out the different templates based off of these particular media, right? So you can see here as web, you'll see that the unit of measure is going to be different, right? Instead of pica, it's going to be pixels. You go over here to mobile, it's also going to be pixels, but you can also see it's for iPhones, this and this and that, different sizes, view all presets. You'll see different things for iPads, for Androids, etc. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to come back to just our first tab, and we're just going to create something from scratch. Now, when you create a new document in InDesign, you're going to see a whole bunch of options over here on the right-hand side, some pretty familiar things that really are self-explanatory, but let's go and explain them anyway. So let's see here. So what is going to be the width and the height of your document? Now, first thing I want to talk about is this whole unit of measure called picas. Okay, technically speaking, a pica is 1/6 of an inch. Okay, so but most of us don't speak in picas, so they do give us the option to then change it to whatever type of unit of measure you want to work with, right? So let's just go ahead and change that to inches, and we'll see that that 66 picas is actually 11 inches. Okay, and you can see it switches over here as well. Later on, I'm going to talk about how you can switch this for good to make it so it doesn't stop asking, so it does stop asking you for picas, and you can always have this as the default. All right, so as inches as the default, if that's not clear. All right, so you can also see how you can switch the orientation. Notice how it's going to go from landscape to portrait. It's also going to ask you how many pages you want. I'm just going to say 3 pages. It's asking me, do I want facing pages? Yes or no. So maybe if you're making a book or a magazine, you might want facing pages. I'm going to say no. I'm just going to have maybe like 3 in a row that are all independent of each other. We're going to make 3 independent posters. All right, I'm going to start on page 1. How many columns do I want? You can have more than 1 column if you want to. Now, before we go any further, I do want you to notice that I do have this option way down below. We come down here where you can actually preview. So if you're not sure on what to do, you can click on this little preview, and then behind it, you'll actually get a preview of what we're doing. So as I'm doing this, let's say I'm like, what is a column anyway? So I've changed this to 3 columns. I'll be able to see that, oh, that's what they're talking about. Wait, they're talking about a gutter? What is a gutter? Let's go ahead and increase the gutter. And we'll see there's now more space between those. Let me go ahead and decrease that. And you'll see now there's less space. So depending on what you want to do, I'm going to make mine just one column. It really just depends on the data that you're going to be putting in there, the content and everything like that, how you want to have it structured. Okay, the margins, same thing, right? Change that however you want. Notice there's also this little guy right here. It basically means if you change the top, it's going to change also the bottom and the left and the right. But maybe you only want to change the left and the right. You can just click on that and then it unlinks these guys. So super easy. See, they're independent of each other. And again, I have the preview, so we'll be able to see, okay, how does that look? And you can see there's a difference between the top, bottom, and now the left and the right. Now we also have our bleeds. Okay, so this is what I have this set up here is a good place to be actually for your bleeds. You don't want to make it at 0 because essentially what your bleeds are going to be is if you want to have like your images go all the way to the edge, like for example here, right? You see that? How it's going all the way to the edge? That's going to have like no bleed at all. So you want to kind of exaggerate your bleed. If you have it at 0, you might actually have a problem where when it prints, you might still get a little bit of an edge along there. So this is a good kind of rule of thumb to keep it at like 0.125 inches to have your bleed there. All right, and then your slug, we'll talk about that towards the end of the class when we're publishing. But your slug is going to be where all your kind of like information about your document is going to go, like your colors, maybe your fonts, some instructions, the name of the document, right, your email, right, that kind of thing. And when you publish it, you'll be able to actually see that kind of on the far outside perimeter of the document. It doesn't actually get printed or cut into the print, but the printer themselves might benefit from that information. All right, so now if I love this, I'm always going to be doing this 8.5 by 11 and 3 pages and da-da-da, all that stuff here. That's great. And I want to save this for the future. I can now click on this guy right here, and that's going to allow me to, guess what? Save this as a preset. So when I click on that, I can now save this. I'm going to say 3-page poster, and I'm going to say portrait. Okay, great. Save preset. And that will be in with my saved with all the rest of these. Okay, and just notice how you can also delete it if you want to as well. All right, and then finally, I'm done. So I'm going to come way down here to create, and I'm ready to go. Now, just to verify, you will see now I have these 3 pages. You'll also see in my pages panel, it shows these 3 pages, and you'll see here 1, 2, 3. All right, and when we come back, we're going to explore a little bit about the pages panel, but we're actually going to start creating something. All right, we're going to be creating a poster using shapes and some of our other basic tools within InDesign. So go ahead and stop the video, practice this, and try to catch up to where I'm at right now so that we can build our poster together. Now, before we get too deep into InDesign and working with all of our text and our images, etc., I think it's important for us to have a nice little overview of the Pages panel, because this is where you're going to be spending a good deal of your time in InDesign. So I'm just going to tear this out here, and we'll see what I'm looking at here with my Pages panel. I have all my individual pages here, right? So I can scroll up and down, and I can see all my pages here. Of course, I can scroll up and down going here and just get to them this way. But if I wanted to just simply get to page 9, I can just double click on that, and that takes me there. Go back up to page 1, just simply double click there. All right, so pretty straightforward. You'll notice I can also work with some other options down below, which is going to be creating new pages and also deleting my pages. All right, so pretty straightforward. If I wanted to just insert a new page, I click on that and a new page gets deleted. I'm going to go ahead and just do Control or Command Z, get rid of that. Then of course I can delete, and it's going to say, hey, there's an issue here. Don't show again, click OK or whatever. I'm going to cancel that because I did that by accident. But know that you could absolutely do that. Now, right-clicking goes a long way in all of InDesign, but in the Pages panel, it absolutely does. So if I right-click on this, you're going to see here I can insert pages, move pages, I can duplicate, delete, okay, just print this one spread. Okay, you have a lot of options here. Some of these are a little more advanced, like alternative layouts and our numbering options. We're going to get into those in our advanced class, but just know these options are here. Okay, we're going to get into our panel options in just a minute, but just know that right-clicking goes a long way here. And your right-clicking is actually very similar to working with this little panel up there, because when you click on that, you're going to see a lot of the same options, if not the same. All right. Now, you'll also notice in your Pages panel is that you may have some other sections up here, and these are known as our masters, right? And towards the end of this class, we're going to get into working with masters. You can see they're very powerful, but you can see I can very easily get to my masters just by simply double-clicking it, and now I'm in my master page, and you'll see down below, it shows me that I'm currently in this master. So I can click back here and go right back to page 1. Great, and there I am, and then I can go right back to this here. Okay, great, and there I am. All right, so super easy, but very important to understand how to interface with the document. Now, or with the Pages panel. Now, you'll also note that I can click all of these little thumbnails independently, or I can also work with them as a spread just the same. So I wanted, let's just say, this page to move over to here. I can easily move the entire page. See that? So really cool, and it groups them all together, just as this is actually connected to one of our settings that we have here that groups them together. Yours may not do that. Okay, so that's pretty neat. Or you can also do an entire spread, and you can go ahead and move the whole thing up on top wherever you like, right? And then it'll go up and it'll just replace it. So do that. And then again, this is how this is all set up to do it. I'm just going to go ahead and just undo that. All right, now another thing you may want to do is work with our panel options. So notice what I did in this case. I just right-clicked in this kind of gray area. I'm going to go over here to my panel options, and this is going to allow me to control how my Pages panel is set up. Notice how I have a section here for Pages. I have a section here for Masters, okay, and then a few other things related to my icons, which are down below here. Do you want these there or not? Okay, and then also, do you want your masters on top or you want your masters down at the bottom? Totally up to you. But you can see here, if I change this to extra small, I click OK, they get weeny teeny, right? Right click again, go to there, let's make them jumbo. Click OK, and they get much bigger. See that? Now I have a nice little view of what I'm working on. Depending on your screen size, totally up to you. I'm going to change that back to medium. Great. Masters, you have the same option there if you want to. Great. And then again, do you want these icons to be there or not? Right? Again, up to you, yes or no. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and click OK, and it goes right back to where I was before. Okay, now earlier we introduced you to the Properties panel. Now we're going to take a look very quickly at the Properties panel having to do with the whole document, if you will, right? You can see here, I have all these options here. It tells me how many pages I have. I can also add on pages if I want to this way. That's great. And then of course I can change all my different margins and all that stuff here, working with all these. And you'll also notice that depending on what page I'm on, I'm going to see the options for that page to be able to edit that particular page. Right now I'm on page 2. Now I'm going to be on page 6. You can see that. That's great. And now if I click on edit page, it's going to take me to my page editing dialog box here within Properties. That's kind of separate from where I was before to then make some changes just to that page. It's kind of cool because let's say, for example, I wanted to change this page just to be landscape. I can do that. See, now this is separate from that particular page. Let's bring that back so you can really see it. See? So if you had a map or something like that or a chart, you can very easily make that change, right? So I'll just let's just go to our first page. Okay, I'm in page 1, and now look at that. Wonderful. Now this is landscape, but the rest of these are now in portrait. Okay, so it gives you that kind of control anytime you want just by editing that particular page. All right. And I'll show you one last thing that's going to help you with your kind of page control. And that is this really great tool here. You'll see that right there underneath our selection tool. And this is our page tool of all things. And that might be a better way for you to work with rather than having to kind of dig deep into the Properties panel. You can see that you're going to get a lot of the same options here, including the ability to go from landscape to portrait just by using this individual tool to be able to do that. Right, so kind of nice. And also you can change the size of the page if you need to and do all those things accordingly. All right, so this will definitely be something you want to practice, kind of get familiar with it, practice on one of your own documents, practice on this document if you want to, the proposal layout template, well, and just really understand kind of the nuance of the whole panel itself, how the property panels work together with pages, and also finally working with our page tool. All right, so have fun, practice this, pause the video, and we'll see you in the next lesson. So here we are in our new document, all set up with our 3 pages and our margins and all that good stuff here. So before we even get started actually cracking into things, let's just kind of take a little tour deeper into our interface and some of the tools we're going to be working with. By far, the number one tool you're going to be working with is going to be this little guy right here, right? This nice little selection tool. And if you move your mouse over, it'll tell you this is in fact the selection tool. And notice in parentheses, there is a V and an escape. It's giving us 2 options for shortcut keys. Okay, either V when you are not in the type tool, but when you are in the type tool, you can't hit V, so you just hit escape. So either one will work depending on the context of where you're at. Another one you'll be working with is the type tool. And then notice it's very easy to get to. Just hit the T key. So watch this. If I hit T, that just bops right over to that. If I hit V, that goes over to that, right? So again, T, V, so you can see that pretty cool, pretty easy. I'm not hitting control, not hitting command, anything like that. All right, so super easy to get to those. Another one that we're going to be working with is going to be our shape tool. Okay, if you right click on it, you'll be able to see I can add on the rectangle, ellipse, polygon, etc. Okay, so pretty nice. Not to be confused with our frame tool. Okay, so notice also different shapes, but our frames are reserved for working with our images. Okay, so as a frame does in real life, it basically just contains images. Okay, where this is just going to be working with like color or just a frame, something like that. I'm going to say not a real frame, but a frame that's just going to be more for design purposes. Okay, and then down below here, you will see that there's 2 options for color. Okay, one is going to be for our fill color, and then one is going to be for our stroke. Okay, the fill is just going to be the inside of the shape, and then this is going to be the outline, if you will. All right, and if you double click on these, you'll see that your color picker comes up. Okay, any one of these. So if I double click on that, you'll see there that is. I want to do this nice little scarlet color. All right, that's great. Cool. Open this up, and I'm going to do maybe a light blue. Okay, great. And you see if I were to draw something out, it would have that color fill and then that color stroke. All right, so I want to kind of get that out of the way just so you see what are going to be some of the basic tools we're going to be working with. The other thing I want you to notice here is that we have our ruler up on top here. Okay, so it looks like it did not take when I put in the right unit of measure. I'm not sure why, so I'm going to go ahead and change that really easily. You can see it's still in picas, super easy to change that. So all I'm going to do now is just right click on the ruler. Now, if I right click here and I just choose inches, I want you to notice what happens. It only changes it here on my x-axis. It doesn't change it on the y-axis. So let me just go ahead and change that back and show you a nice little trick. If you right click over here in this little nexus, and then I say inches, it's going to change it for both of them. Okay? And the last thing here that we're going to do before we start cutting into this is just take a look at your layers panel. Okay, your layers panel is going to be very important for your organization. We're going to get a little bit deeper into it as we move forward, but I just want you to kind of keep an eye on your layers panel. When you first start, you're just going to have one layer that's always going to have other things living inside of that layer before you create an actual new layer. I know that sounds very confusing because it kind of is that if you have like 50 elements on your page and you never create a new layer, all those 50 elements are only going to live inside this layer 1. Okay, so we're going to get more organized as we go forward here. So let me just give you kind of an example of what we're going to be working on here, right? And I want you to just see how these are examples of just like some posters that I found that, you know, are just very simple. But what do they use a lot of? They use shapes a lot. So our first lesson is really not just about creating a poster, but using shapes and seeing the value and the power of working with shapes. All right, so you can see here, shape, 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 different colors. You can see circle, circle, circle with a little drop shadow there. And look at that, how shapes are being used for containing our text That looks really nice. You can see here's some other shapes with nice little drop shadow, shape, shape, shape. Here's a line that's considered a shape. Here's another shape, more shape. So you can see how they're invaluable. You'll see them everywhere, no matter what kind of document you're working with, right? So if we even go back to some of the files that I was working with earlier I showed you, okay, you can see these shapes are containing our images, okay? But you'll also notice how this is the shape that's behind this other shape. Here's a nice little shape that's underneath there. Let's take a look at some other ones here. Let's take a look. These are just images here, but let me go back to this document. You can see here's a nice little shape, right? And some lines here, okay? So just kind of get an idea that like, yes, absolutely you can work with shapes in many, many different capacities. All right, so also notice here I have a lot of documents open here. So if you, in case you want to close them at all, you can just go ahead and click on the X, or simply right click, and you can see there's a lot of other options there that you can work with. Okay, so let's just start digging into this. Notice here I'm on page 1, and that's what I want to be working with. And I'm going to use as my model, I'm just going to use this one here because I have 3 different circles and then 3 different rectangles. So just see how easy it is to create that. But the first thing what I'm going to do is create a background for it. I'm going to very simply use a rectangle and just draw that into that. Okay, so I'm going to choose the rectangle shape tool, and I'm going to say I do not want a stroke. So how do you do that? Just simply click on the stroke, make sure that's active, and then click on that guy right there. All right, so if you look here, it's this little slash, and that basically is like, hey, don't do anything with the active color there. With this one, I'm just going to double click on that and then maybe bring this up kind of a little bit of a lighter color. And notice how I'm interacting with my color. You can see here, I can change this going this way. I can also change the whole hue in general. And then I can change all of the shading and brightness from here, of said color. All right, so I'm good for that right now. Okay, it doesn't really matter. I can change this very easily. When working with color, you might know your RGB value, right, which is good for web-based, right, for the screen. And you also might know your CMYK value, which is good for print. Okay, so this is red, green, blue. This is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And then some of you may also be working with your hexadecimal code. All right, and at some point later on, we're going to talk about swatches, and we're going to see how we can also use this little color picker. But for right now, let's get cracking on this. I'm going to click OK. I'm just going to draw out my shape. I'll come all the way down, just like that. Notice how I'm overstepping where the margin is and the bleed and everything. So I just want to make sure that's in there. It's not going to print. Don't worry. Okay, great. Now I'm going to right click here. I'm going to choose my ellipse tool, and I'm just going to double click there, and I'm just going to find that nice little burgundy color, burnt sienna. Okay, and then I'm just going to hold down the shift key to make a perfect circle. Okay, if I don't hold down the shift key, notice I get that, but watch this, hold down the shift key, perfect circle. Great. Now I have kind of a container that's ready to go for my stuff, and maybe I'm going to have that a little bit off kilter a bit. Now remember, one of the earlier lessons, I showed you a way to get a preview of it. So if I hit the W key right now, look at that. I'm actually able to see it without those markings, right, hitting the W key. So I want to kind of have this a little bit sort of off the page. Can do that. Okay, that's kind of cool. Maybe it's a little bit too close to the margins. Okay, kind of like that. Maybe it's a little bit too symmetrical. Okay, fantastic. Good. I'm ready to go. All right, and I'll bring that back so I can see where my margins are just by hitting the W key. Okay, so pretty straightforward making shapes. But now what I'm going to do, because I want the same exact shape, right, literally the same size and everything repeated all throughout. So what I'm going to show you next is something that's a great shortcut key, which is going to be the Alt or Option key. And what does that do? That clones. Okay, that is going to clone whatever you have on the screen. So what does that mean? Let's just see that in action. If I hold down the Alt or Option key, notice how my mouse turns into this little double arrow. I'm just going to go ahead and click and drag, and bam, I've just cloned that. It's like a very quick cut and paste. All right, so I'll go ahead and do that one more time. Great. Now, I don't want these same colors because if we go back to the model that I had here, our sample, right? These are all different colors, so I can just play around with these colors. So I simply select it, and I can go back over here to now change my fill color of this. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to simply double click on that, and just choose whatever color. Let's make it something a little nicer to look at. All right, not too bad. Kind of blends in a little nice with the background. Cool. Click on that, click on that. Okay, so what do I want to change? Again, click on this one here, double click, and then let's have a little bit of contrast. Let's choose green. Cool, hit the W key. All right, starting to come together. I like that. And maybe this is going to be off the page a little bit. Okay, so pretty easy to do, and you're going to see incredibly necessary to understand how shapes work. Shapes are going to be everywhere. And just a little bit of background about what shapes are so we kind of can define them properly. Shapes are technically known in both InDesign and Photoshop, and especially Illustrator, as vector types of graphics, right? Which means that I can resize this as big as I want, and you'll notice that it does not get pixelated, right? The edges stay nice and clean and nice and smooth. And that's kind of the benefit of actually drawing out the shape as opposed to like getting a JPEG or a PNG off the internet. Drawing it out actually gives you a vector, so when you print it out, you bring it on the web, it's gonna look really nice and neat. So let's go ahead, and now I'm gonna draw out my rectangles, and I'm gonna make these kind of black. Why not? Okay, come all the way over here to the far left, and just notice also the RGB value, all the zeros, right? The hexadecimal, 0, seem like a little harder to remember, but you can see, bam, fantastic. All right, I'm gonna click OK. And very simply, just draw out a rectangle, go back to my move tool, right? Very important. I could have also hit the V key to go right back to it, and I'm going to just hold down the Alt key to clone that, hold down the Alt key, and clone that. All right, so again, hit the W. Okay, it's really coming together. I really like that. Now, earlier, I was discussing layers, okay? Notice something very odd, right? Where like, I have 6, 7 things on here. How come it only says 1 layer? Okay, now if you didn't understand it the first time, you're gonna get it. Watch what happens now when I click on that little guy right there. You're gonna see, oh my goodness, there's a lot going on here, right? So if I click on this little eyeball, you can see how that rectangle goes away. There's another rectangle going away. Okay, so they're actually here, but they are not named. They're named as rectangular shapes, and they also kind of live inside this layer called layer 1. Okay, so if you want to name these, very simply, you could just simply double click it. All right, so I'm just going to double click on that. I'm just going to type out main content. All right, and then you can color code the layer if you want to, and then you can change all these specifications if you want to as well. We're going to get into that a little bit more when we get into more complex content. All right, so really good. All right, so you can see, all right, that might be called, I'll just do 1 for now so you can see. I'm going to double click on that. And you'll see when you double click on the sub layer, nothing really pops up. But when you do a slow motion double click, watch that, see? Then this gets activated. It's very interesting. Then I'm going to change this to lower left. Let's just call that text box. Okay, so again, you can go ahead and change these however you want, but we're going to keep it just for the sake of this exercise, just as it is, just so you can learn the tools, learn the process, etc. Now, coming back to one of our earlier lessons when we were talking about working with properties, okay, because I want to know the properties of these. I want to be able to manipulate the properties of these. All right, so if your properties panel is not up, you can always go back up to Window and you can choose Properties and it will pop right up. Okay, very good. Now you'll see for all the things I'm working with, I have all of these individual properties I can now play around with. All right, I recommend you always have the Properties panel somewhat available to you. It doesn't have to be this prominent, but just know where it is and just know how to use it. So as an example, if I wanted to change the color of this, notice here is my appearance and my fill. So if I double click on that, this is going to take me to a number of different what we call swatches. These are all saved colors that I can now use. All right, come right back to that. You'll also note that I could go over to any one of these and play around with them, different swatches, gradients we're going to get into, and then my color picker. So let me do that one more time. Very easy to miss. This little guy right here is going to take us to the color picker that we've been working with. On this side, we can also do it with our properties. So I do that one more time, and I go over to here, double click it, and let's just say I want to do something a little more kind of bluish gray. I click OK, and there that is. All right, and again, click on this, you'll see my color will change. Click on this, my color will change. All right, now let's just take a tiny little tour of our properties panel so we can see all the other options that are hidden for us. Right, you can see, wow, a lot of cool stuff that we can work with here in terms of our X and Y value, meaning where's it located on the page, if you want to be very precise about it, our width and height, right, in case they're not the exact same size, you'll be able to see that right there. Okay, again, we looked at our fill. We can change our stroke from here. We also have something known as our opacity, right? So I want to make this a little more kind of like see-through, just for kind of a fun effect. I can make this a little more see-through just by bringing that down a little bit. Maybe we'll bring it down to about 74, 75. We'll see, oh, okay, cool, a little bit of visual interest. All right, so let's come back to that one more time. Scroll down, and you'll see I have some of my alignment tools here, our text wrapping. We're going to get into all these things later on, okay? But you can see how there's a ton of functionality in the properties panel as you move through any object in InDesign. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. I want you to practice this, catch up to this here, and then we'll do a quick lesson on how to bring in some type and have fun. So I hope you're doing okay with your poster practice and you're all caught up with what I've got here. And we're just going to do some basic finishing touches on this, and that's going to be just doing a little bit of type, how we can bring in type, and also how we can place images. All right, so currently what tool am I in? I am in the selection tool. So I'm just going to hit the T key, and that switches me over to the type tool. Certainly you can go ahead and click on this if you like. And I'm just going to click and drag to now put in what I want to put in. I'm just going to put in Fanny's Flowers. Okay, and that's going to be the name of my shop, so therefore the name of my poster right there. So you can see if you really zoom in, you can really see what I have there. Obviously not big enough. So what I'm going to do is simply not double click, but I'm going to triple click on my content in there, and that selects the entire paragraph in this case. And you'll see both in my properties panel as well as in my toolbar up on top for my options, I'll be able to see all my font settings. We're going to have a much deeper dive into text in a little bit, but let's just for right now, just so we can kind of finish our poster, let's make this maybe a little bit bigger. And we'll also learn how we can change the font. So I'm going to make this about, I don't know, 48. That works for me. Then I can change my font. And again, we're going to get into these a little bit deeper. I'm just going to change this to, that's a kind of a fun one. And now very easily, I'm going to resize my text box, bring that down, and I'm going to do two other things. We're going to make this resized. Notice how I'm doing that. And guess what? I'm going to come over here to my properties panel, and I'm going to align that in the center. Okay, and then notice I just had to go right to my properties panel to find so many things all associated with whatever I selected. And in this case, it was this text box. All right, so I'm going to hit W. Okay, great. That's coming in. Love that. All right, you'll want to practice that, of course. Right now, we're going to bring in an image. So in InDesign speak, and Photoshop speak, and Illustrator speak, bringing something in, an image or even text, is considered placing. So what we're going to do is we're going to place in another image so we can have that here kind of as the background. So if we go over here to File, you'll see here's an option to place. Also notice the keyboard shortcut, definitely one of the more valuable ones. So I click on Place, and it's going to take me to this file. I have my links and images. You should have access to these. All right, and then I'm just going to find an image to bring in. Now, when I click on that, you will see this little kind of mouse that's sort of got a little backpack of my image pops up here, essentially giving me the option to now choose where I want to put it and how big I want it. Okay, so watch this. I'm going to simply click and drag just like that, just kind of eyeballing it. And then bam, there it is. Love that. That's pretty great. All right, so easy to do that. All right, so again, if you were to go to File and Place, you just find your image however you want it. We're going to go a little more detail in placing in just a little bit. And you'll also notice a few other options here, etc. So in case you get kind of stuck in anything and yours is kind of getting a little bit weird, just make sure that you uncheck this box here. You do not want that checked, okay, just in case. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just cancel that. Now, you'll notice this, it looks good, but not great, because guess what? This is all covering all of my text and circles and all that stuff, and that's not what I want. So how do I fix that? How do I make it look how I want it to look? Because ultimately my goal is to make it so this picture is behind all my circles, but in front of my background color. So if we look over here, we have our image name that's right here, and all of our other shapes and our text and everything like that right underneath it. So very simply, all I need to do is just drag this down. So this is going to be our first kind of major lesson about working with layers. So I drag this down all the way, right above rectangle, and look at that. Cool. There it is. Love that. That looks better. All right, and I'm going to show you later on how we can work with images more specifically in terms of resizing and all that good stuff. All right, so we're going to do that in the next lesson. But at this point, I want you to get caught up with just doing some basic text and then also placing in images and then playing around with our layers. Okay? So practice that, pause the video, catch up, and we'll see you in the next lesson. In our last lesson, we just learned how to bring in a basic image using the Place tool. So we just placed in some images. We also we placed in an image, we resized, no big deal. Let's just bring in some more, and we're going to see how we can do some other things on this document and then also some other documents. So I want to bring in some images inside of each of these circles. So very simply, I go to File and Place, or again, Control or Command D. And let me just find this guy here. And I'm just going to click and drag to put that in there, right? Not going to be perfect for right now. Don't worry about it. Let's find another one. This time, just for fun, I'm just going to do Control D. We'll see how that works. Awesome. Fantastic. Let's find another one. All right, great. And I'm just going to click and drag. All right. And then make sure, by the way, before you actually bring in your next image, make sure, this is very important, that no image is selected here, right? Because if I were to now do a place, it's going to replace this image here. Okay, so very important. Okay, so kind of get into the good habit of like clicking away, because if I had this selected and I went to place, it's going to replace this one. Sometimes you want that, so it's kind of a nice thing. All right, now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to, instead of actually clicking File and Place, I'm going to draw out a frame ahead of time. So my image is going to live inside of that frame. All right, so what do I mean by that, right? These images right here that we just brought in, they actually consist of a frame as well as an image, right? You can see here there is the frame here, which is going to be the blue box. And then when I click on the center, that actually becomes this little kind of rusty box right there. Okay, so you'll see that there, right? And for some of you, you may actually see a circle in the middle. So I'm going to activate my circle in just a little bit. Okay, so you'll be able to see that just the same way that I'm seeing it and the way that you're seeing it. All right, so that you'll see that each image has two elements in it. It has both the frame and it has the image inside of it. So what we're going to do preemptively is just draw out our frame. So if I go over to here, this time what I'm going to do, just for fun, so you can see what you can do, is I'm going to draw out an ellipse frame, okay? Meaning I don't want it to come in looking like this. So I'm going to click on this now, and I'm just going to click and drag while holding down, guess what? The Shift key. And see that? It's now a frame. Just imagine you went to the store and you picked up a frame from the store and you're like, okay, now I got all my favorite pictures and I want to put that inside of the frame. So what I'm going to do now is just simply go to File and Place, and then I'll find a picture that's going to go in there. And let's just choose these bellflowers, okay? And it did kind of what I wanted, but not really, right? That wasn't the picture I brought in. We're going to fix that in just a little bit, Okay, but just note that you can bring in a picture inside of a frame. InDesign is going to do its best to bring it in there for you. All right, so just for fun, I'm going to do that all over again just for these, just so I actually have circles and not what they want. So you'll be able to see me do that one more time. So I'm going to do that relatively quickly. Hold down my Shift key. I'm going to do Control D. I'll find, this time I'll bring him up there. All right, click away. Remember, get into that good habit. And then again, notice also there is a keyboard shortcut for these. Just go to the F tool, right? And that's going to access the frame. Hold down the Shift key. Have there, it's all ready to go. And then also notice the difference between the frame and the shape. It has this X in there, as I said. So now I'm going to go ahead and just do Command or Control D. Now, before I do this, I do want you to notice a little hint. It is telling me it is going to replace the selected item. So that's what I was telling you before, that you want to kind of be aware of these things when you do them, because like you want to make sure that nothing is selected, because it's going to replace the selected item. Okay, so very important there. So let's now find another image here, and that's going to fit in there. Kinda, not really. Okay, so let's see how we can fix this. Let's see what we can do to do a number of different things. First of all, I want to have these beautiful flower pictures fit inside there. Not doing it. How do we fix that issue? If you right click on an image that is not fitting in there, you will see that there's this great option here for fitting. InDesign knows that this is something that happens, so they have a whole bunch of tools that are going to allow you to do all these different things. So what's the problem? Do you want to fill the frame proportionally? Do you want to fit content proportionally? That's not really the problem. Do you want to fit the frame to the content? Or do I want to fit the content to the frame? That actually makes more sense, right? Because I want my content, my image, to be the same size as my frame, because I drew up my frame first. So watch what happens when I click on that. Nice, that comes in there, but it's not perfect. So I'm going to right click again, go to fitting, and this time I'm going to choose this really great option for content aware fit. And it's going to use its kind of algorithm, and then it kind of fits in there pretty nicely, right? But we can experiment with some other ones. Let's go to fitting, and let's just say fit content proportionally. Nah, not so much. So I'm going to do Control Z to undo. And you'll see when I click on this, I now can understand what's going on with this whole frame and image phenomenon. You can see the image actually goes outside of the frame. So if I click and drag right in the center and I get that little rusty color, I can now move this left and right and kind of show what I want to show. Let's do that again for this guy. I'm going to right click. I'm going to go over to here to fitting. I'm going to choose fit content to frame. Not bad. Right click, fitting. Let's say content aware fit, but you can also try some other ones, maybe center content, right? Fit content proportionally. Just try it all out. I do find that content aware fit works pretty good for the next step. And you can see pretty good, right? And it also didn't warp the proportions. I click on the center and you can see, bam, there that is. And then this time I'm going to use the arrow keys in my keyboard to just kind of nudge it so I don't accidentally click anything else. All right, and let's see what's going on with our groom. So I right click, fitting, fit, I'm going to say fit content to frame. And okay, not bad, but you can see he's a little stretched out. That's not sort of human. So I click on content aware and there it is. Perfect. All right, so you'll want to practice this. This is going to be something that you'll see all the time. So number one, what did I do? I just brought in an image without any frame at all. Then what else did I do? I actually drew out my frame and then I had the image go into the frame itself. So depending on what your layout is, you might want to have it all structured in such a way. All right, now let me show you kind of one of the kind of trickiest bits you're going to see when you're working with images. Because earlier we talked about we had two different things we're working with here, right? We're working with both the frame and we're working with the content. All right, so the frame is on the outside and the content is on the inside. All right, and they are treated independently. So watch what happens now when I try to resize this image. And this is the kind of thing that makes you go crazy if you haven't worked with InDesign before. I'm going to try to resize this. I'm going to make it nice and big. Watch this. Click and drag and, well, that's weird. Let me undo that. Did I do something wrong? Let me try from this side. Click and drag. Huh. What if I make it smaller? Whoa, something odd is happening. What is actually happening? The frame is operating independently from the image. Because I want, when I grab the corners, I want them both to get resized, both the image and also the content. So how do I deal with that? So what I'm going to do is come down here while my image is selected, and I'm going to choose this guy here, Auto Fit. Strange language, but all that is basically saying is, hey, we're going to make both the frame and the content work together, right? Work together as one. So when I do resize, I can now resize both of them together at the same time. Okay, so we'll go ahead and just click on that. Make sure again, Auto Fit is chosen. Click and drag, and bam, there you have it. There you have it, right? Maybe I'm gonna make that a little bit bigger so it kind of takes this up a little bit more. Okay, great. I'm gonna fix that in a little bit because it's kind of still a little bit glaring. We're gonna work with opacity, but really the key thing here is, okay, let's make that just kind of fit in nicely. All right, and we're kind of coming together pretty well with that. Now, you probably noticed as you were doing this that there is a set of options for frame fitting right above auto fit. So of course it's up to you what you want to do with that, right? If you want to right click and go to fitting, or if you want to say frame fitting, just right from here. Again, totally up to you. Okay, now one of the last things we're going to do here with this properties panel, especially for this little image right here, is work with the opacity. Remember how we worked with opacity for the shape? We can do the same thing for our image. I want this to be very subtle. It's just going to be just kind of a whisper in the background. So I click on this little drop down here and then drag that over. It's like barely there, right? It's just kind of like, hey, I'm kind of just like background noise, right? Not a whole lot going on, but I can go ahead and just make that fit so it goes into the entire frame. See what that does. Oh, that's kind of nice, right? So it's like your sort of subconscious sees it more than anything. Okay, so it's like, okay, that's just sort of decorative, if you will. All right, so what did we do? We work with frames in many capacity for pictures, right? Then we also went and we fitted the frames. After we drew out the frames, brought them in, making sure that the frame is not selected if you wanted to not replace it. And also we worked with doing auto fit to make sure that the frames and the content work concurrently with each other. And then we also worked with transparency. All right. Now, if we take a look at the layers panel, you'll see I now have all of these things all set up, ready to go. I could certainly go and manipulate these however I want to, rename them, reorder them, really practice that. Okay. So one last thing here, you'll see that this is selected here, and you can see that this is selected. And it's just called rectangle, not a very good name for it. So I probably want to change that at some point. But what I'm going to do is just click and drag this over here so I can see that above it. So again, another little review on working with layers. All right, so pause the video, practice that, and we'll come back in the next lesson. Now that we've got some of the basics out of the way for our images, let's do some maybe more advanced kind of creative things. So I'm just going to hit the W key so you can see what I have going on here. This particular image has a nice little stroke around it. So if I click on the image, you'll be able to see in my properties panel, it shows me here that I have a white stroke around this that is 2.5 points. So if I were to make this bigger, you'll be able to see that's going to grow. Pretty cool. I can then also make this have also a different style of a stroke. You can see that. Let me make that nice and big. Pretty cool. That can be kind of fun, kind of creative. So you'll want to play around with all the different types of strokes, the width of the stroke, and everything that you can do in terms of the color, the width, right? All the different styles, everything like that. So pretty neat. All right, so play around with that, kind of experiment with what's going to work for you. Now you'll also note that for certain documents, working with text wrapping is going to be very important. Okay, so if I were to go to this image and now move this up here, I want you to notice how my text just kind of gets the heck out of the way, right? It's like, okay, image coming through. So you'll see it could actually be very beneficial when you're working with images and type together to work with text wrapping. Where can I find my text wrapping options? You guessed it, the properties panel. Let me go ahead and make this taller so we can actually see pretty much most of our options available to us here. So again, you see here the transform and all those other X and Y, etc. All those things there. There's my stroke, etc. All right. But now you're going to see I have everything having to do with text wrapping right here. All right. So if I want this to wrap or not wrap, if it's not wrapping properly, then I can work with it better. So let me go ahead and turn it off so you can see what it's going to do kind of by default. So when I say no text wrap, which is right here, you're going to see everything gets all messy, right? Like, uh-oh, that's a problem. Don't want that. So it's very easy to apply that. You'll see that there's a number of different text wrapping options: wrap around bounding box, wrap around the actual object shape. This will actually just jump it, right? Which actually might be a good candidate for this. And then you'll see this is going to just jump to the next column if you're working in columns to this extent. So for this example, it's either going to be wrap around the bounding box or this one. Since we already saw this one here, wrap around the bounding box, let's just see what this one does. And look at that. It just jumps it. Okay, that's pretty cool. Just like, all right, because it takes up the whole width, the whole frame. Excellent. Now, you will notice that there's a space around the image, right? This kind of padding around it. So you might want to have a little bit of padding around it, because if you don't, then guess what? It's going to be way too close, and then that's not going to look very clean, not going to look very nice. So you'll see here I have the top padding, the bottom, the left, and the right. And then notice again, here's my link icon to be able to say, hey, do I want all those things doing that? Yes or no. And in this case, it's really just about the top and the bottom. So I'm just going to uncheck that and then just make that go a little bit higher. Notice how it's pushing away my type. Okay, pretty cool. And then let's do it also for the bottom. Let's push that, push that, push that. Okay, nice. A little bit of breathing room. Hit the W key. Cool. Now that's nice and clean. I love that. All right. Okay, now let's go to one more fun feature I want to show you that you can do with images, and that's changing the shape, if you will, right? So looking at this particular image, you will see here that it is a square, right? No big deal. But I might want to change the frame shape of this so it's a circle. So how do I do that? Like, I don't have to start all over again, draw out the circle and then bring it all in again. Too much work, right? Wasted calories. So what I can do is, again, make sure the image is selected and go over here to the Object menu way up here. And then you will see way down below is this Convert to Shape. And look at all the different shapes that I can convert this to. If I want to do a rounded rectangle, you'll see now that is a rounded rectangle. You see that? Oh, that's pretty neat. That's super easy. Let me now change that to something else. I'm going to click on my image again, go over to here to Object, go over here to Convert to Shape. Now let's try an ellipse. Oh, kind of like that too. Now it's not a perfect circle. Guess what? Now I'm going to see the benefit of working with a shape of the frame independent of the content itself. So make sure that autofit is not selected in this case. And now I can just go ahead and bring that in. You'll see that now I can make this perfectly round. Okay, so a lot of cool things you can do, right? So you can convert these things, again, by going over to Object and Convert Shape to change it to a different shape altogether. Okay, and we can also work with text wrapping, right? And then all the other options I showed you before in terms of fitting, bringing them into the content you want, etc. All right, now, one last thing I'm going to show you in terms of changing the shape, and again, this is going to be maybe a little bit more advanced, but definitely a helpful thing, is being able to actually change what we call the corner radius right here on the fly. All right, so look at this one right here. You'll be able to see how the corner radius, which means the corners right here, is exactly 0, right? That means that it is just a hard corner. If you go over to our appearances over here on the right-hand side, you're going to see it says corner, and then you'll see it's like that, all right? And you can see it's just a hard corner. So I can easily change this now to a very different one. I'm going to change this to bevel. All right, very subtle. I'm going to make that go a little bit bigger. And let's watch that grow, grow, grow. Cool, that was easy. Let's try a different one. Let's go to fancy. That is indeed fancy. Wow, look at that. Let's try something else. Let's go to inset. And again, you play around with these. And that inset, I want that, but maybe it's a little bit too much. So I bring that back up again. Cool. So depending on what your goal is, what you're doing. Now, what I just showed you here, even though this is just an image, I can easily do this on shapes, just the same. So if we go back to here, and if I wanted to make this into something, whatever, fancy, inset, right? Any of these other things, I can absolutely do that. So now it's going to look more like a badge of some kind, right? So let's go ahead and do the same thing for all of these. It's not the one I did. What was it again? It was that. And finally, that. All right. And then that starts to look maybe a little more important, really stands out, a little bit of visual interest. Okay. So just because you have a shape doesn't mean you can't change the shape. Just because you have an image with a frame around it doesn't mean you can't change it, right? You can change the size. You can put a stroke around things. You can change the corner radius of it. You can change the stroke color, the stroke style. So much you can do. All right. So if you haven't paused the video at this point to practice all of these things around images, I strongly encourage you to do it. Okay, watch the video again if you need some review, but this is going to give you a great foundation for images, the importance of images, and give you really the skills and the comfort level you need to really master everything you need to do when you're bringing in images and how it works with text wrapping as well. All right, so go ahead and pause the video, have fun, and we'll see you in the next lesson. Now that we're a little more comfortable with placing in images, working with images, manipulating them to a certain degree, let me show you a quick little pro tip for bringing in images in bulk, but also for aligning them, putting them into a little bit of a grid system. This is going to be good if you're maybe creating a contact sheet or a catalog, anytime where you're going to have like a lot of images all at once. So how do we do that? Let's go ahead and just click on File, click on Place, right? Same deal. And all I'm going to do now is just click, just adding on. I got 4, 5, and 6 pictures ready to go. I'm not going to choose Show Import Options. Click Open. And now just wait for it. I'm just going to click and drag. And now with my arrow keys on my keyboard, I'm just going to hit the up arrow. Then I'm going to hit the right arrow. See that? And I can also resize it just like that. So the up and down arrows will create rows. The left and right arrows will create columns for you. So that is perfect. I let go of my mouse and just like that, perfect setup. Amazing. And I can go ahead and grab them all just like that. And I'm good to go. Really awesome. Okay. So you want to practice that. But now, before I let you go and practice that, let's talk about another way you might actually want to do something similar to this, and that's working with frames. Okay, so you actually may want to work with frames that are pre-existing that are essentially placeholders for you. So you can do the same thing when you're drawing out a frame. So let's just say I wanted to bring in, 6 individual frames that are going to be placeholders waiting for me to bring in my images, right? I don't have those images yet, but I know they're going to live there. So as I click and drag now, I'm going to do the same thing, right? See, perfect. But in this case, it's going to be 9 images, okay? Because I have 3 rows and 3 columns. And now you can see, bam, those are ready to go. And then maybe I want to place them right here. All right, so these are just going to be my frames all set as placeholders, ready to go, where I can now bring in an image if I want to, very simply and easily. So let's just go ahead and bring her in there. And then again, we learned about this, right-clicking, fitting. I'm going to fit the content to the frame, and then that's a little bit of review for you. Okay, and then content to where fit, and perfect. She fits in there nicely. All right, so now, but again, I have it all set up. Maybe it's for me, maybe it's for my coworker, I'm collaborating, maybe I'm with a client, whatever it is. Okay, so either preemptively, you're going to bring in your images, or you're going to set up frames to be able to have placeholders all ready to go. All right, pause the video, practice this. This is one of my favorite things, and have fun. We'll see you in the next lesson. Okay, and welcome back. Hopefully you are enjoying your exercises and you're ready for some more fun stuff to learn. We're going to continue on with this discussion on images. However, this is not just about images what we're going to discuss here, because we're going to discuss alignment And the alignment really falls into the category of aligning really anything you see on the page, any kind of object, where it could be text boxes, it could be shapes, could be images, could also be alignment within a text box, right? So I want this center aligned, and we saw earlier that we can actually align these, right? Really nice and easy. And you'll also see that I could align objects that are all right next to each other, but I can also align them to the actual margins of the page if I want to. So let's just say, for example, I want to align this little badge with this badge. Okay, cool. How would I go about doing that? As soon as I click on both of these, and I just held down the Shift key, by the way, to do that, you will see that the Properties panel now shows me all of these alignment options over here. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and check these out and see what's happening here. Notice I can left align them, I can center align them, right align them, top, and then also centers in the vertical, and then also looking at the alignment on the bottom edges. So you can do a lot of things here. But now, before you even just kind of go pull the trigger, I want you to notice this little guy right here. This is very, very important. This little guy right here is saying, okay, what am I aligning it to? Because sometimes when things don't go right, it's usually because this guy is not really doing not really doing what we want it to do. Okay, it's doing what we probably told it to do, but we didn't realize what in fact it is telling us to do. So if you click on the drop down, you're going to see I have align to selection, align to key object, align to margins, align to page, align to spread. Currently it's saying, oh, align to margins. That's not what I want. I want to align to the selection. So therefore these guys are now talking to each other. Right? Do you see that? So if I say align left, see that? Now they're perfectly aligned, okay? As a result of me choosing align to selection, okay? So we want to pay attention to these things here, okay? So just be aware of kind of what's what, all right? Let's add on another element to this. Let's say I want these to all be kind of like perfectly distributed among them. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the first one, hold down the Shift key, second, and now the third. And you'll see that underneath align is all of my distribute object options. Okay, so let's just see what these guys do and how this can actually help us. I want these to be evenly distributed among each other. Okay, so all three of them are selected. And let's just see what happens when I click on that distribute top edges. Oh, that's pretty neat. Oh, nothing different there when I do distribute my vertical centers, right? Because they're all equal distance in terms of, they're all actually the same size. So there's not going to be any difference between the top and the center and the bottom. All right, so you can see what's happening with each of these. If I choose this one, I'm going to be getting something a little bit different, right? Because it's distributing something a little bit different, not necessarily what I wanted to, right? You can see this is going to be more or less the thing that I want. All right, so notice how they are perfectly distributed among each other now. So I click away, let me put my W on there, and that looks pretty nice, okay, because these are aligned with each other, and then all three of them are evenly distributed away from each other, okay, and that's as a result of working with distribution. Okay, so pretty nice. I want you to really just practice that and understand kind of how these work. You can use some of your other images as well. Okay, now some of you may want to go a little more advanced. We're not going to do that so much in this class, but I want you to know that there are other distribute options in terms of distribute based off of a certain type of spacing and a certain amount of spacing. If you always want it to be a certain amount away from each other, you can absolutely do that. Okay, so go and experiment with those on your own. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, let you practice that. I'm going to come right back on this particular document, right exactly where we are, and we're going to talk about links. Just a brief discussion on links. We'll see how important they are, how valuable they are, and how easy it is to work with. Now, as promised, we're going to talk about links. So you may have seen links referred to when you open up a document and it says, hey, we need to update our links, or we can't find certain links. Links, for the most part, are going to be talking about images, all right? Because you're going to be linking up images that you're going to be placing into your document rather than having them embedded into the document itself. Because many times, especially when you're printing, you're going to be working with very, very large images. And in order for InDesign to not be bogged down by really heavy images, it just links it up. All right, so this is going to be pretty important because you want to make sure that you can find these links when it comes time to send it to your printer and everything is nice and tidy. And also you want to make sure that the links themselves don't get compromised. All right, and you're going to see an example of when we're going to have lots of compromising. We might have some problems otherwise. So where does our links panel live? It's going to live right here. You can see here as links for me. If you don't find it, you can always just simply click on Window and go over here to Links, and it's going to pop right up. I'm just going to pull this over here, and you will see very simply, I have just these 4 images here, right? 1, 2, 3, and then the image in the background. So nice and easy. I can see, great, I have this image, and guess what? It's on page 1 because I only have 1 page, right? Makes sense. You can see, bam, there they are. Great, wonderful. You'll also see that on the bottom, gives me all this information about that particular image. What is the color space? You can see the size of it, the PPI, the location of it, the date that it was modified and created, all that good stuff there. Fantastic. When it was placed, love it. All right, so that's pretty important. Now, this one's pretty straightforward, and this one's actually nice and intact because you'll see, wait on the bottom, I have no errors. That is your goal. That's what you want to see. Because if you have any things that are not linked, like let's say my coworker deleted this image, my coworker moved it to another folder, right? Changed the name, something like that. This will then change to 1 error, okay? Or 2, or 3, or 4, whatever it is, okay? So we want to kind of pay attention to that. So let's look at an example from another document, this long doc class. You'll see I have a lot of errors in this. How do I know that? Come down to the bottom here and you will see, there it is, 57 errors. Boo, we do not want 57 errors. I'm going to go ahead and just double click on that and you will see that I have 56 link errors, missing links. Oh my goodness. And it tells me what page they're at and everything like that. Oh my God. Wow. So what do? Let's at least just see what they are. Like, oh man, okay. There's something missing on that side. Okay, let me just see if I can, okay. Maybe it's just a little flower. Okay, I guess that makes sense. Some of these are AI files, Illustrator, some of them are JPEGs. You can bring in Photoshop files if you want to. Okay, let's just go over here to this one. Okay, wow, all right, that's an issue. I need to resolve this. Why do I need to resolve this? Towards the end of the class, we're gonna discuss packaging our files. All right, notice this is a pre-flight panel. So before you package, you need to look at your pre-flight to make sure that everything is airtight. Because what's going to happen is that when I package it, it's going to be looking for all these images to package together to send to my printer so my printer can do a good job of printing the highest, best quality possible. So it needs all those images when I finally do package them. All right, we're going to be doing that towards the end of our lesson, but I want you to really understand how important this is. All right, I'm going to close this out and let's see what we need to do to resolve this issue. Okay, so I have a lot of issues here, right? Lots of problems. So if I go to here, you'll see again all my information, okay, blah, blah, blah. But then you're going to see these guys right here. They're going to help me with my problems, okay? So let me just make this a little bit taller so I can see it there. We can see how this can interface. Do that. All right, and then let's just see what we can do to resolve some of these issues here. So if you move your mouse over here, you can say relink from CC libraries. I'm not working with my Creative Cloud libraries, but that might be something you want to do. You can see here's also relink, just relink period. Okay, you'll see also I can just go to that link where this lives, presumably. Is that there? I'm not exactly sure, but I'm just going to go ahead and just relink this. Okay, so let's just see what happens now when I click on that. And I'll be able to see, there's the image I'm looking for, isn't it? Oh, okay. So I can click on this and then maybe it's going to relink it. That's great. But I also want you to notice this very, very important checkbox that is going to help you just immeasurably. Search for missing links in this folder. Yeah, because you know what? A lot of his buddies are probably in the similar folder, or at least like 1 or 2 of them. Who knows? So I'm going to click on this now. All right, you're going to see, all right, it's linking it up. I'm going to click OK. One by one, it's looking for it. Just looking for it. Wait for it. Okay, search this relink directory and found and relinked what? 56 missing links. I love that. Thank you. InDesign, I click OK, and guess what? No more crazy icons to scare the behoojas out of me. That's amazing. And guess what? I only have one error, and that error has nothing to do with links anymore, does it? It's just text overset, and you'll see what that means in a future or past lesson, depending on where you're at with things. Okay, but no worries. Now I'm all set with links. All right, so you want to practice that. You will see that. That will be coming up many, many times as you're working with images and when things get moved around. So you want to be able to kind of know where they are, be able to find them, and also learn about your images as well. All right, so that's just kind of the long and short of working with links. And again, understand why we did that. When you're finally going to package your final document as a PDF or getting it printed and et cetera, you want to make sure that everything is nice and airtight there. All right, so practice that, pause the video, right? You can work with the document that you have here available because there should be some missing links there for you. And then make sure you got the process down and watch this as much as you need to. All right, and we'll see you in the next lesson. Let's now get a little bit more advanced, complex, and creative on our images. So one thing you may want to do is copy the style and effects that you have for one particular object and apply it to another. So far you've probably seen that I have this little badge here that has this particular color, and I do not have that same color here. So let's say I want to just copy this and say, hey, listen, can I borrow that from you? No problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the object that does not have all of the object properties that we want. And very simply, we're going to go over to this little guy right here, this little eyedropper, right? Think about what eyedroppers do. They just suck things up so we can borrow it from another place and then apply it. So very simply, I'm going to click on my eyedropper, click on this, and just like that, it's done. That's amazing. How cool is that? Okay, let's now do it for this one. Go to there, and bam, there we are. Okay, so that's all set up. Now, I do want to talk about something called styles that we're going to be working with in a future set of lessons. And styles are going to allow us to save the look and feel of these in terms of the color and maybe the corner radius and the transparency and all that good stuff. So that way we can reuse it over and over again. Okay, so in the future, we're going to be talking about lots of different types of styles. That's going to be an object style. It's going to apply to different objects, right? Like text boxes and shapes and images. All right, now let's go ahead and go on to something else that you might want to do creatively, and that's working with our different effects. Okay, so where are our effects? So I click on my image here, and you will see that there is, where are you? Right over here is effects, and you literally see it says FX. And you'll also notice that there is another place to see effects, and that's going to be here just the same. So what are our effects? When I click on that, you'll see I can put a drop shadow in there, an outer glow, inner glow, a feather, right? So it's kind of has a nice little soft glow around it. All kinds of different things we can do. I'm just going to put on a very simple drop shadow for this. Click on drop shadow, and you'll notice, if you zoom in here a little bit, you'll see I got a nice little drop shadow there. And I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. I'll click away. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Hit my W. All right, to see how that adds on a little bit of dimensionality to my image. Now let me turn that back on. And let's just try it for this one, but maybe I want to just control it a little bit more, see what we can do. Go over here to Effects, say Drop Shadow, and now you will see I can now really customize what my drop shadow is going to be. Let me just bring this over a little bit more over here so I can see it. And now what I'm going to do is just customize what my drop shadow properties are going to be. Now you will notice that I have all those effects that I saw earlier and all the things that I could now add to it if I want to. We're just going to work with our drop shadow and all of its properties right here. So you can see everything that I have available to me, including my position and distance, my opacity, where it's offset, okay, the angle of my drop shadow, right? All kinds of different things. So let's just go ahead and explore what we can work with here. So if I go to my distance, let's just go ahead and bump that up a little bit and just notice how that goes away and it comes right back. Notice as I do that, my offset for my X and my offset for my Y also change. So X is going left and right, Y is going up and down. I can also change the angle. So I can click and drag on this little sundial thing here, and you'll notice how that changes. Essentially, this is saying, well, where is the sun coming from to cast the shadow on this side, right? So it might be kind of counterintuitive, but you understand exactly what this sundial is in fact doing. Let's now increase the size, and what that does, not to be confused with our offset and the distance, basically it makes it kind of look a little more diffuse, if you will, right? You can see that. It's a little more subtle, okay? And then we can play around with the spread a little bit, and that's gonna go way out just like that. You really have all the control in the world how you want to work with this. And then you have your opacity, and also you have your color up on top here. So if I bring my opacity all the way up, you'll notice what that does, right? A little bit darker, a little bit lighter. And if you want to be a little more creative, you can change the color of your drop shadow, and you can see, oh, that's kind of nice. I can maybe match it to be my flowers or whatever it is. I'm going to keep it a black. Click OK. All right, and then I'm good to go, right? Of course, certainly play around with all these as much as possible. I'll click OK. Love that. That looks great. Let's maybe do another effect. This time I'll go up to here. And then let's just do an outer glow. Now, let's see what our options here are for our outer glow. Notice how it's a little different than it was when I work with my drop shadow. And you'll see that there is a different mode, right, that we have not explored yet, right? It's a little more advanced, but this is a blending mode, right, which is known as screen. And then that is my color of what the actual outer glow is going to be. If you click on this, you'll see there's a number of different blending modes. Essentially, it's going to be a little bit darker with its background, right? That's what the blend mode has to do with, right? And a few other things that you'll just really want to experiment with. That's going to be reserved for a little more advanced class, but it really is a very kind of spice to taste type of approach. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this color. I'll just change that to maybe not yellow because it's got a green background. And I'm going to change this from screen to normal. You'll notice how it jumped up a little bit. And then let's bring up the size somewhat. Go out, out, out. Now I can really, really see it. That's great. Maybe I'll bring up the opacity so I can really, really see it. And you play around. Okay, great. I love that. That's fantastic. Again, play around with all the things, right? Very similar to what we saw before with our drop shadows. I'm like, okay, good. You know, just really sort of spice the taste. What do you like? What don't you like? And then say okay. And then there we are. Fantastic. Now, earlier we talked about object styles. And if you recall, object styles are basically going to be a saved format. So if I like this format, I can save this as a style. All right, so plant that in the back of your head for something that we're going to be spending a lot of time on for styles, to be able to save it so we can apply it over and over and over again, but then really be able to make very quick and easy changes on a more universal level. That is going to be object styles, and we're going to be doing that very soon, so stay tuned for that. So what I'd like you to do for right now is practice using the eyedropper tool, practice applying different FX styles, right, to your different objects. Play around with some of even the ones that we did not work with, just to kind of see how easy it is to apply it, and get ready for the next lesson that we're going to do on object styles. This lesson is going to focus on object styles. Object styles. So let's first define what a style is. Essentially, a style is going to be a format that is going to be saved that we can apply over and over again. So the format could be, hey, I love this drop shadow, and I want to have this object inherit that drop shadow. I might want to put an image that's going to have this little stroke around it. Okay, fantastic. And I also want this one to also have the stroke. Maybe I want this image to have rounded corners, and I want all my images to have rounded corners, but I don't want to have to do them over and over and over again. That is when object styles come to the rescue and help you implement these things and execute things in a much more expeditious way. And if you decide you want to change things, you can also change it in a very fast and efficient way. So first thing we want to do before we do anything at all is bring up our Object Styles panel. Where are we going to find that? All of our panels live where? Inside of our window menu. Click on that, and you're going to see that there is a whole section just for styles. We come over to here, and I'm just going to bring up my object styles. All right, and then just for right now, I'm just going to dock this over here, keep things nice and neat. And you'll see I have these kind of like generic ones that don't really have too much to do with anything at all, right? Like none, basic graphics frame, basic text frame, okay? And I want to click on this guy here, okay? Notice this says none, right? Click on that, none, right? There's nothing really going on there. Even though I actually see the effect here, the style has not been saved, okay? So my goal at this point is to use this set of effects that I have in this object and apply them to all of my other objects that are on here, and then keeping it again, all saved and universally applied, because that way, if I decide, listen, I'm going to do a completely different thing, I want to actually make it a universal change. So how do I actually make this into a style? First thing you typically want to do is apply your effect or whatever you're going to do to your object on what I like to call the front end here, like on this, just like how we did it in the last lesson. And then you will see over on the lower right of my Object Styles panel, this little plus sign. And before you click on the plus sign, I want you to find the Alt or Option key on your keyboard, which is going to allow the dialog box to pop up when you click on this. Create new style. I click on that, and fantastic, wonderful. All right. Now, everything that you're seeing here relates to what I clicked on here. So essentially, it's like picking up on what I've selected as its own style. So if we go over to here on the right-hand side, you're going to see that there is this Fill Effects option here, and I click on the drop down for drop shadow, and you'll see that there are some elements here based off of what I have selected on this object, right? And that's actually what I applied early on. So, okay, cool. This is what my style settings are. On the left-hand side, this is where I can actually make some changes to that if I wanted to. If I wanted to upgrade this, I can absolutely do that. I'm not going to do that now, but these are going to be your options to be able to do that. We're going to come back to this in a little bit. Let's just keep it nice and simple. So I'm just going to minimize this. This is great. I love this. So all I'm going to do now is just very simply name this. All right, I'm just going to call this drop shadow object, whatever you want to call it, right? Totally up to you. And I always like to have the preview checkbox chosen. And as well, I like to have the apply style to selection. This part, surprisingly, is very, very important because you want the object that you've chosen to also have this style applied to it. It may have had the effect applied to it, but it doesn't have this style name applied to it. Okay, so both of these should be checked. All right, fantastic. Good to go. I click OK. All right, and now I have a new style here. Great. Now I want this to also have the same style. So when I click on this, you'll notice also none. But when I click on this, look at that. It looks exactly the same. Click on this. Wow, amazing. Super easy. Okay? Now let's see it in action. Let's say I want to do a different type of drop shadow. I want to change the direction of it, something like that. Let's now see it in action. I'm going to edit this object style by simply double clicking on it, and it opens right back up to that same dialog box I was in. And you will see on the left-hand side, as I showed you earlier, this is the part where I can actually make the changes. So when I click on drop shadow here, this is going to look very familiar to when we actually created my drop shadow and all the parameters around that. So I want you to watch as I change, for example, the drop shadow angle. So watch this. As I click and drag going this way, notice how all three of them changed. They're all connected. Okay, let's go ahead and just increase the spread a little bit. Look at that. All three of them have that. That's so cool, right? Because I'm working with what? A style. All right, let's make the spread go out a little more. Oh, I love that. That's so cool. I click OK. And see, now they're all universally affected because I'm working with a style. All right, styles are going to be invaluable for you. All right, now let's go over here to our trifold here. And just for fun, let's play around a little bit more with this particular one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my properties panel up here. And again, I'm on the front end of things. I'm going to make some changes to this. Let's now put on a rounded corner, and I'm going to make that even more rounded. All right. And I love that. Good to go. So I'm going to make this into an object style. So making sure that my object style panel is up with this selected. I'm going to hold on the Alt or Option key to now create my new style based off of this selection. And now I'm just going to say rounded corner image and then white stroke. All right. So whatever it's got on there, that's great. And you can come in here to verify if you want to. You might have to go a little bit deep to see kind of what options, right, you have here, like your stroke. Right, you can see that there is going to be a stroke weight of 2.5, right, and the color is paper. Okay, that's great. You can go even further over here to our corner options. You can dig deep. You'll see that it is in fact there. All right, but I don't need to. I trust InDesign. I click OK. And now we'll see my object style panel. That there's going to be a little more in this particular one. Here's the one that I just created. And now I want this object to inherit what this is on here, right? So I click on that and I'm like, oh man, this is so different. It's like my boss comes over and says, well, we need it to look exactly like this. This one looks beautiful. Ah, man, okay, what did I do? I can't even remember how I did that. Oh, you know what? Thank gosh golly, what did I do? I saved this as a object style. So I click on that and then what the, oh my God, that's perfect. It did exactly what this one is doing. All right, and guess what? I can always go back and make changes to this just by simply double clicking on it. And then I would go over to all the settings on the left-hand side to say, hey, listen, the stroke is now going to be a little bit thicker and just make that thicker. And then guess what? Both of them now change. So just imagine if you had like 50 of these things. Because you're working with an object style, you'll be able to actually make just one change inside of the object style panel, and you're good to go. All right, I'm going to click OK. All right, and then let's talk a little bit about what other things are known as objects. All right, so if I go to, for example, this right here, this is actually a text box, right? We know that, right? We've seen text boxes. We're going to get even deeper with text boxes in some subsequent lessons. But this is also known as an object, believe it or not. So if I had something I wanted to do with this, then I would actually make this as an object style so I can repeat that over and over and over again. All right, so I want you to kind of put a pin in that as we get a little bit deeper with our text box objects. And if you need to actually save it and repeat it for other ones, make it into an object style. All right, so there's lots and lots of different other objects like shapes, text boxes, images, etc. And just remember, object styles are going to help you be more efficient to save your formats and then also execute them likewise for additional objects. All right, so go ahead and pause the video, practice what we've just done, make sure you understand the concept of object styles and also the process around that. Because guess what? In a little bit, we're going to be doing different kind of styles as well, not just object styles, but paragraph styles and also cell styles. All right, so pause the video, practice, have fun, and we will see you in the next lesson. Now we've talked quite a bit about images, then objects and effects on objects, effects on images, and even object styles. Next, we're going to talk about type, typography, text and fonts, and all that good stuff, because InDesign, if nothing else, is definitely going to involve you creating documents that have text in there. So we want to be able to have as much control as possible over our type. Not just some of the basic things like font and font size, but we're going to be working with things like leading, kerning, tracking, maybe some baseline options or alignment, all that good stuff here. All right, so what we're going to do is we're just going to work off of this HP long document, and I'm just going to work with this text. So it's really nice and easy to get into text boxes if you have a text box already, even though I'm working with my selection tool, I can very easily double click inside of a text box to get into the text box. Even though I'm not in the type tool, it automatically takes me to the type tool. All right, so very cool. Now, if I do a triple click, excuse me, let's start with a double click. If I do a double click, I select the word. If I do a triple click, it selects the line. If I do a quadruple click, it selects the paragraph. If you do 5 clicks, it actually will select the whole text box in this case. And this was a whole thread of text boxes. All right, so we're going to learn a little bit more about how text boxes all work together. All right, so again, double, triple, quadruple, quintuple. Okay, so you can see how nice some of these shortcuts are. All right, so let me just go ahead and just do just this paragraph for right now so you can see how things work. Now, a couple of ways to be able to manipulate my type and the paragraph and all that good stuff here. Number one, you guessed it, is the properties panel. Right? We've been working with this already. And number two is going to be this section up here. But one thing I want you to notice is that the section is actually broken out into 2 sections. Okay, one is going to be for character, one is going to be for paragraphs. So what's kind of interesting is that I got one section here and another section here. All right, so totally up to you how you want to work. If you want to work with the properties panel, you can do that. Or if you want to work with our control panel up on top, again, totally up to you. There's some overlap on all of these. All right, so for right now, I'll just start off with my little top control panel and see what our options are. So right now, it tells me here that I'm working with this particular font style, right? This Montserrat OTF. Okay, great. And I can very easily change this to something else that gives me a nice little preview of it. Okay, pretty cool. Now, you will see that when I'm choosing these, I also get a little preview of it, in addition to being able to then decide, listen, I like this font a lot. I would like to save this font. So how do I save a font? If I like a font, I want to save this just to kind of like, hey, listen, this is going to be something I want to work with over and over again. So if I find, like, let's just say articulate right here, articulate extra bold. Okay, that's great. Notice how on the right-hand side, there's a little star. Okay, I can now click on that. This is actually already in my favorite, so I'll choose another one. Let's try Baloo. I click on that, and now it's going to say add to favorites. Great. Let's try another one. Let's try this. Bedoni, add to my favorites. Okay, cool. So those are going to be easy to find. But how do I find them? What do I do? You will see that up on top here, let me go back to this. Up on top here is going to be this little star next to this little filter icon. So essentially what this is saying, hey, do you want to only show just your favorites? So when I click on that, guess what? Only my favorites now show. If I want to remove something, let me go ahead and remove Baloo. It's no longer part of my favorites. Let's remove that one. Okay, great. I like this one. I don't need that one. Okay, great. Click back on that. It takes me right back to all of my fonts. Click back on it. It shows me only all of my favorites. So it's a really nice way to stay organized with things. You can also filter by other things, the different classifications, sans serif, serif, script, and a few other things here, like more Gothic type of things. And you'll see here, it'll just allow you to only show those particular types of classifications of fonts. You just want to experiment with it. Also shows you your history. Okay, so really cool stuff here. So I'm just going to keep this for right now, right? And then this is just set as my, let me just go ahead and quadruple click there. And then I'm going to choose this articulate extra bold. That's great. Love that. And then I go over to here. There might be some other different parameters that you can save the font as or apply the font as, regular, italic. Each font might be a little bit different. Like Arial, it's got like 5 or 6 different ones. Helvetica, it's going to be the same thing. And of course, here is the option to increase the font size, decrease it. All right, so these should be pretty basic for you. Now, you may see some things that you have not heard before in terms of the terminology, right? What things are called. So let's explore things a little bit deeper. And that's going to be number 1, this is my leading. And then you'll see here is my kerning. And then here is going to be my tracking. Okay, so some pretty funny words in typographical language, but they're also going to be giving you a lot of power. So we really want to kind of know what these things are. Leading essentially is just your line spacing. That's really all we're talking about here. So if I decrease this, notice how the lines get a little bit closer to each other. All right, and of course this is going to be dependent on the font size you even start with. So I'll just make that about 15. I like that. That's pretty good. All right, and I click away. All right, I like that. Now in the future, I may save this as a, guess what, paragraph style. So then I can then apply it to all the rest of these. No problem, I'll do that in just a bit. All right, so that's wonderful, that's great. But now let's go ahead and explore some other things. My kerning and also my tracking. So let me just go ahead and first just move my mouse right in between the B and the U so we can see a little bit about what kerning actually is. Let me just bring this down tiny bit. And notice what's happening. I'm having all the control in the world that I need between those two letters. Let me go ahead and just do it right here. Let's bring that in. Maybe I want to be a little more creative about this, but more importantly, sometimes words when they come together, letters when they come together, it's going to look like something else, right? So you kind of want to be aware of that like some letters, like if it's an L that's leaning up against, a C or something like that, could like reflect, it's going to look like something else, right? So you really want to kind of pay attention to these things and know that you have control over the space of individual letters between each other. So I'm going to just go ahead and just give that a little more space, and we'll see, okay, great, that's pretty easy. That essentially is what our kerning does. What does tracking do? Tracking will affect the entire word going across. So let's just try this now. See that? Maybe I want to make this look a little bit more kind of titly. You see that? So it's going to go a little bit across there, right? So it's going to kind of spread a little more. Let's just try it with these guys here. All right, let's just make that go a little further out. You can see, very nice, very easy. That spreads everything out a little more. Everything I'm showing you here is about controlling your typography, right? Whether it's your line spacing, your kerning, or your tracking. All right, now there's a lot more we can explore. Let's just play around with maybe just a few more here. Let me go back to another document here. Let's just go to, go to here, and let's just play around with some other things that are going to be available for us. Do we want this to be in all caps or not? Notice this is all set to be all caps. You can make that change, but I want it to be small caps. Notice how that's going to change. All right, maybe I'm going to turn that off. So now it looks like regular case or sentence case. All right, that's great. Notice there's also another option for underlining, superscript, subscript, and even strike through if you want it. All right, so great, like that, good stuff. So again, just know what your options are here. Now again, you will see that you're going to see a lot of the same options that we just saw here under character, all right, and potentially under paragraph. One thing you'll want to notice about what properties does is that it's going to actually hide some of the options that are going to be available for you right here. See that? It's going to hide it for you. So you got to click on those three dots to then see some of the options that may not be there. Like, oh, there's my kerning, there's my leading, there's my tracking. Okay, cool. So again, let me click on the three dots, click on them again. All right, wonderful. That's great. All right, and the same thing for paragraph. If you're not seeing what you want, click on the three dots and oh my goodness, there's so many things just hiding there. Just really designed to kind of give you a little more screen real estate. All right. So, and again, this is really all about how you're controlling all of your content. All right, so let me come back to here and let's now play around with some of our kind of more, let's go to our paragraph stuff here. All right, so let's go now to the other section within this panel. Remember, this is going to be here. Looks like a little backwards P or a paragraph symbol. And you'll see there's a lot of options here that I can work with. All right, so some of my basic alignment options, left, center, right. Okay, that's great. Here's also my options for indenting. So I have this whole paragraph selected just by simply clicking on it, and I can now indent the whole paragraph. Notice I didn't have to select the entire paragraph because it speaks for the whole paragraph just by virtue of the fact that I've moved my mouse inside of the paragraph. You also may want to have a first line indent. So I click on that and then, oh, that's how you do that. Great. So I know I want it to be exactly 1/2 inch. I can very easily do that. And then likewise with the rest of these, you'll really want to kind of experiment with like what's going to work for you. Right indent, or last line right indent. You know, some of these are going to be a little less used, a little more obscure. So play around with those. Now these two I think are going to be very important for you in terms of your typographic control for your layout. And this one is going to be space before and space after. All right, so the space after this is making this space come up how it's coming up right here with all that inside of there, right? This 0.25 inches. If I want it to come in a little bit more, notice how I can do that. It's all about control. See that, or I want it to be just something different. See that? You can have more or less very easily by coming to these. This one here is just going to be the space before, so it's just going to move it down from whatever's above there. All right, so really cool stuff, very easy to execute. All right, and now the last thing I'm going to show you here on this particular one, let me just move this back, so this is going to look a little bit better if I do it like this, is something kind of neat is your drop cap option. So notice I have two options here. Let's just see what they do. What is a drop cap? I say 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's kind of interesting. And okay, but what if I want to have it more than one letter? Oh, that's kind of cool. So you can have some kind of creative control over that. Like you've seen these in magazines before. They're like, oh, that's pretty cool that I can even make it say, all right, different words. Oh, nice. So really make it stand out, have some control over how your paragraph is going to come out. All right, so let me just go ahead and bring this back down just to 1. Kind of nice, right? Try that with something else. Let me come down to here. I'm just going to bring this up. Very nice. Okay, excellent. And of course, it depends on what font you're in. Later on, we're going to talk about how we can manipulate this as well. It's a little more advanced, but I think it's going to be important for you how to manipulate this A to maybe be a different font. Totally up to you. All right, so I'm going to take a little break right now, and I'll have you just practice everything we've done up until this point within text. All right, pause the video and practice understanding all the properties around your paragraph, your character, everything that we've done here. And I also want you to either change it within your panel up on top, your control panel, or in your properties panel, wherever it is kind of floating for you. All right, just really get comfortable. Use the documents that you have available for you in the course files. And just make sure you understand kind of what is kerning, what is leading, what is our tracking, you know, how we can change the font size, how we can work the paragraph spacing before and after. And if you have a document you want to work on, just again, try to play around with it and then play around with it until you get full kind of natural control over what each of these elements do, so you know how you can then manipulate it moving forward on your own. All right, so we'll give you a little bit of a break, pause the video, and we'll come back and we'll do some more typographical stuff in just a bit. In this next lesson, we're going to learn how we can bring in text from other documents and from other file types. So your eyes do not deceive you here, but we are looking at a Word document. Okay, and I've worked very hard to work on this Word document, and I want to be able to bring it into InDesign so then I can manipulate it and do all kinds of different things to it. Now you'll notice how this looks here. And it's got all kinds of different styles and everything like that. It's got all kinds of different formatting on here that I actually don't want. I mean, I'm going to do it myself when I bring it into InDesign, but think about, this is like a different language. Just think about like, you speak German and you're going to try to go over to Spain. These are different languages. They're in the same kind of world a little bit, but no one's going to really understand each other, or there's going to be like some words that might overlap. Let's say Portuguese and French, right? Those might overlap with each other, but there's going to be a little bit of a disconnect, okay? So what we want to do is bring it in, and we're going to say, listen, I just want your text. So let's just see how this process works. And again, imagine your scenario where you're going to have a whole bunch of text that's already been created, and you want to just bring it in to your InDesign document. I'm going to show you a few different ways to do this. All right, so I'm going to close this out, come back to InDesign, and I'm just going to go ahead and create a blank new document for myself. Okay, that's great. So I'm just going to go ahead and make this size, and then let's just make it 3 pages for right now. It's great. I click on create, and it's going to be a blank new document. There it is. You can see good. It brought in the unit of measure this time. Wonderful. There are my 3 pages. It's excellent. Now, how do I bring in all that text? Earlier, we talked about how do we bring in images. We did that through placing. Placing. It's the same exact thing that we do with text. So I'm going to click on File. I'm going to go over here to Place, or just Control D. And I'm going to go into my courseware files here. And I'm going to find a Word document that is ready to go for me. And this is known as the cookbook text. And you'll find that in your courseware as well. Now, earlier, when we brought in our images, I told you to uncheck this right here if it was already checked, your show import options. Okay, so this guy right here, you do not want that checked when you're working with images, but when we are working with text, I definitely recommend that you do that. So we're going to click on that, and we're going to see why. It's very important. I'm going to click on this text right now. It's a Word document, and a dialog box is going to pop up, asking me a whole bunch of things. What do you want and what don't you want? All right. If you have a table of content and index and all that stuff, do you want that? Sure. Maybe, maybe not. Totally up to you. For formatting, do you want to preserve the styles and formatting from text and table? Maybe, maybe not. Or do you want to remove the styles and formatting from text and tables? Okay. I'm going to suggest like 99% of the time that you do, guess what? Remove the styles and formatting from your text. Why? Because we need to give it basically a clean bill of health, right? Just start from a clean slate that it just belongs to InDesign. We do not want it to inherit any of the stuff from Word. InDesign is just going to get confused, because what we're going to do is we're going to put all of the InDesign language on there, and then we're also going to put our own, guess what, styles on here, using paragraph styles and also character styles. All right, so this is great. I click OK. And now notice my mouse has this little sort of extra backpack there, waiting for me to bring in my egg recipes. All right, this is going to be the first way that we can bring in type, okay, by placing it. Just watch me here. I'm just going to go ahead and click and drag, and I let go, and it's like, oh, okay, that's not everything. So I just clicked and dragged, and okay, that was good, not great. Oh, but you will notice that there's this little red plus sign there. That's InDesign telling me that, oh, there's more stuff for you to do. So, oh, okay, I can grab more. Oh, we just, we got cut off here. No problem. Click on this and then bring this in very manually, right? It's like, okay, great. I can do that. Cool. Oh, I'm still not done. Oh man, okay. Now, let's just say this time I want to do 2 columns. So I can just do that. All right, and then keep going. Maybe there's going to be an advertisement up here. So I'm just going to make this kind of like halfway. Still not done. Oh man, I am so out of breath right now. This is going to take a long time. I now have to add on new pages, which you certainly can do, right? If I just right click on my little thumbnail here, I'm going to say insert pages, and maybe I'm going to add on another 5 pages. All right, and I could continue going on all day long with this, okay? Not ideal. Sometimes it's going to be the case where you're going to do things incredibly manual like this, okay? But we're not going to do it that way. I'm going to show you 2 other ways to do it, maybe even with a bonus of 3 other ways. So this time I'm going to create another new document, and I'm going to make it, so again, this is about maybe 5 pages long. I'm going to click create, right? Blank new one here. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to File and Place, Show Import Options, click on Cookbook Text, all right, remove styles, all good to go, fantastic. But this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the Alt key or Option key on my keyboard if you're on a Mac. And I want you to notice how it changes the cursor a little bit when I hold down the Option key. Do you see that, or the Alt key on the PC? All right, and watch what this is going to do. This was known as semi-automatic text placement. So when I click and drag on this and I let go, notice how I still have this guy waiting for me here, okay? I have not let go of my thumb on the Alt key here, right? I can click on that, great. And then let me just come back over to here, put my finger back on the Alt key, and you can see that it's still kind of like locked and loaded for me to kind of put this wherever I want. I don't have to go to that little plus sign and then find it there. All right, okay, pretty cool. All right, great. And I just kind of, there's my add there, right? I'm just holding on the Alt key. Great. See that? That's the main difference. So this is semi-automatic. Okay, and then I'm just going to click once to then go bam, which just blasts it all out. And see, I still didn't finish it all. Oh, man, I didn't put enough pages in there. Good golly. So what am I going to do next? Let's create a new document. I'll show you the third option. And this time, just for fun, just so you can see the power of this, I'm going to make this just like 2 pages because I don't even know how long this document is, right? I do that. It's only 2 pages. But this time, I'm going to use the automatic way of placing text. And that's going to be using the Shift key, So I'm going to go over here to File, Place, right? Show Import Options, Cookbook Text, right? Everything's good there. Click OK. And now watch what happens when I hold down the Shift key. This time, I'm not holding down the Alt key. I'm not holding down nothing. I'm holding down the Shift key. And I'm just going to simply just click once. And guess what happened? It created a new page, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh my God, look at that. Awesome. It went all the way down and it created the new pages for me based off the size of the document. All right, so placing your stuff is really going to depend on what you want to do as far as how automatic you want InDesign to be for you. Okay, so again, we saw 3 different ways. One is going to be very, very manual. Another is going to be semi-automatic. And this last one was very automatic, where it just plopped everything out and created the new pages for you. All right, let's do that one more time in another way that you may prefer also. So again, totally up to you. And this time, I'm going to say new, and I'm going to say, just to guess, I'm going to say 10 pages. I'm going to say this time it's got 2 columns. All right, good to go. That's great. And then just because we haven't seen these yet, I'm going to go ahead and click on Facing Pages. It's great. All right, and then let me just see what the preview looks like. Do I really like that? Let's increase our gutter. Let's see what that looks like. I'm going to switch this back to inches so I can speak my language. All right, let's just go there. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Now, and I get all these pages here. That's great. And see, these are facing pages, right, except for the first page. That's just how it works. And let's now see what happens when I have my facing pages with my columns and I use, guess what, the automatic feature with this. Let's just see the magic of this. So this time I'm using my keyboard shortcut. Hopefully you got this down by now. Control D. I'm going to click on this right here. It all looks great, fantastic. I click OK. And this time, watch what happens now when I hold down the Shift key and I just click here. And then look what it did. It not only filled it all in automatically, but it knew that there are columns and it applied it accordingly because I set those columns up beforehand. Okay, really, really awesome stuff here. Just understanding all the power to save you a lot of time and a lot of headaches getting ready of how you bring in some text from the outside, whether it's just a basic text document, a Word document, okay, and how you can work with all those little nuances, all those little modifiers. All right, so when we come back, we're going to learn a little bit about text boxes themselves, and then we're going to get into actually working with paragraph and cell styles. All right, so please practice all this and we'll see you in the next lesson. Now, following up on our last exercise where we placed some text in, you'll notice that some of the text boxes have come in not necessarily looking how I want them to look. Now, sometimes it's going to be the case where it's going to come in as just one column. How can we actually make it look the way that it looked like when we finally had the 2 columns here, right? Or 3 columns, whatever we want to do. All right. So how can I manipulate this text box to look in kind of different ways? So very simply, if I right click on my text box, you're going to see that there's this option for text frame options, or there's my Control B. I click on that, and you can see very simply, I have this section here called columns and another section here called number of columns, and another one asking me what is going to be the gutter. All right, we talked about gutter a little bit. We talked about columns initially, and we'll see, okay, well, what do I want to do with this particular text box? How many columns do I want to do? So let's just see what happens when I change this from 1 to 2. Oh, that's great. Or 3. Oh, wow, looks more like the Wall Street Journal, right? New York Times, right? Maybe that's what you're trying to do. Wonderful. So I'm just going to bring this right back to 2. And then I'm going to just manipulate my gutter. So I just can add more space between columns. Super easy. Okay? Really, really great, really powerful to be able to control your content and show it how you want to show it. All right? Great. So I love that. Now, another thing you may want to do is manipulate the inset spacing. So the inset spacing is going to be the space, kind of the padding. It's going to be where the line of the text box is from where the actual text is. Now, when is going to be an example of when you're going to do that? Typically, if you're going to have some color, right, that's actually a really good example, because if you have color, you want a little bit of white space, on this. So therefore, the text does not kind of bleed directly on that color. So I'll just give you an example here. So I'm just going to click OK for right now, and I'm just going to add on some color to this. So this is an object just like anything else. So I can bring in some color, just like I did for my shapes in earlier lessons. So I'm going to double click on that. I'll just do this nice light-ish blue color. I click on that and see how that's really not that easy to read. All right, you can see, yeah, not very pretty. And I need a little bit of white space here. Love this color, but I need to manipulate all these options here through my text frame options to be able to change all my inset spacing. So making sure that preview is chosen, I'm just now going to just click on any one of these, and because this is now linked, it's going to change all 4, the top, bottom, left, and right, and it's going to make this much, much easier to read. See that? As simple as that, and you have all the control in the world to be able to make that happen. Now, if I wanted this to be the same for all the rest of these, what could I possibly do? Any guesses? What could I do to now apply this to this, to this, to this, to this, to this across the board? I'll wait for you to think about it. Tick tock, tick tock. Object styles. Object styles. Okay. Anytime you want to repeat something, try it out with object styles. And let's just do a little review on how that would play out with an object style. So I'm going to create an object style based off of this, because that took me so long to remember what I did. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this as an object style. So let's go to Window. Let's go over here to Styles, Object Styles. All right. And then what I'm going to do is simply just click on this, make a style based off of what I have selected here. Click on Alt or Option. And I'm going to say blue text box to columns. All right, that's great. Certainly spot check all this if you want to. Apply style to selection, preview. Excellent. That's great. And now guess what? Come down to here. Bam. Look at that. Oh, that's so cool. All right, you can see working with object styles once again. And even though we're working with a text box, I want you to understand that a text box is also known as an object. All right. So you really, really want to understand this and practice all this. Okay. So really, really get this or understand the value of it. All right. So maybe you want to change the color of this, and then this would change the color for every single one of these selected, just like how we did in the last exercise with our drop shadows. Okay. So go ahead, pause the video. I want you to go over to your text frame options, make some changes to your columns, add some columns, add the gutter, okay, and then add some color. And then you'll notice that you're going to need to change your inset options to be able to add some padding. And then I really want you to practice making whatever you do as an object style and then apply it to the rest of them. All right, really harness the power of InDesign. Okay, InDesign wants you to use these styles and also get under the hood a little bit with some of these text frame options. All right, so practice up and we'll see you in the next lesson. Now, a few additional items that I want to discuss with regard to text boxes is going to be text threads. And also you're going to see sometimes we're going to have our text boxes that are not going to be complete. And you'll see that sometimes you'll see a little error as a result of that. So let's just see kind of what we can do to resolve some of these issues and also just to kind of look under the hood a little bit. So sometimes when you have documents that look like this or going from one page to another, sometimes it's kind of hard to tell where one text box sort of threads to another. You know, because you might actually have an image here, you might have an advertisement, you might have a completely blank page. You might also have some text boxes just kind of fly off into kind of outer space and you're like, well, where is this going to? Where's it coming from? So this is where text threads come into play. So when I click on this, you'll notice I'm actually seeing the thread of like one text box leading to another, leading to another, leading to another, leading to another. That's great. Now I can actually see where they all go. You'll also notice that down here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit and click on that. I have this little guy right there that's telling me, oops, I've run out of space here. So how am I even able to see all these little threads here? What's even going on for me to allow that? Because for you, a lot of you may not even be seeing these little threads there. If you go up here to View, and you go down here to extras, you're going to see there's this option to show text threads. So notice how they go away, right? Because I just hid them. Go back over here to view, go over here to extras, and then say show text threads. Now, of course, when you're in W mode with the with and the without, you're not always going to see it, right? You click on that, see it's not showing up. But when I hit W to now make it show all my markings and everything, then I'm going to be able to see those little text threads. Okay, so really kind of valuable, especially when you have those kind of documents that I discussed earlier, as far as, you know, like going on to different pages, it's going to jump someplace else. You might have images, advertisements, whatever you have. Okay, so you can see that's kind of nice how that works. Now I can also just move this and you'll see how the thread will follow along just like that. So you can see it. And if this was going to go way down here, see the thread now follows and it goes exactly where the next text box is. Okay, that's kind of nice. You can say, all right, great. And this could be like 50 pages down. It might even be someplace even more kind of preposterous, like over here, and it still follows it. You know, I've worked on with clients before where they have these like huge books and like 20 people are working on it. You know, it's over the span of like 20 years and people are moving things around. And I was like, wait, we can't find things sometimes. Like, well, where is that? Oh, wait a second. Let's turn on the text threads and let's see where these things live, right? So there's a lot of value to that. Let me just go and undo and bring this back. And then we're going to go ahead and resolve this issue of our little red plus sign, okay? A lot of times we may miss this, okay? We may not even realize this. But you know who isn't missing it is InDesign, because you can see way on the bottom, you can see is one error. And if I double click on that, it's going to tell me text, overset text, and there is a text frame issue on, guess what? Page 5. Okay, so you can see that. That's what that means. It's basically saying, hey, on page 5, there's a text frame issue. Okay, well, what is that? Oh, I see it now. So you can see, all I need to do is simply click on this, and then I get a very similar cursor like I did when I placed my text with a little backpack here saying, well, where do you want the text to go? So I'm just going to go ahead and click or click and drag, either one. And then bam, it's going to go there and look how many errors I got. 0.00. Awesome. Okay, so it's a great way to just kind of have a nice little airtight ship. Now, the last thing I want to show you here is the ability to actually show some of the markings in the background of our text. Okay, because that's going to be sometimes important to see, is this a hard return? Is it a tab? Is it a line break? You might want to know these things because it's going to help you kind of determine why things aren't doing what they're doing sometimes and how to take the necessary action. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so we can see the markings when I bring them up. And how do I do that? It's going to be under type. Right? You click on that and you're going to see way down the bottom here is show hidden characters. And you'll see, oh, okay, look at that. These are my hidden characters, right? All these little paragraph signs basically mean that they're all separated out by a hard return. All these little dots there just basically means that somebody hit the space bar a few times. See that? Look at that. Now I see all those. And if there's tabs, you might see tabs occasionally. See, this is what a tab looks like. So it's kind of nice to see these occasionally just to be able to identify, like, well, what in fact is going on as I just basically do some of these markings, some of these basic markings, but again, just to ultimately troubleshoot, right? Like what in fact is going on and why. Oh, it's just a hard return. Oh, it's a tab. Oh, it's just space or whatever it is to be able to see all that. Okay. Now, another thing that's going to come up for you is when you're bringing in actual text boxes themselves, right? We've done that before. You may actually want to have some placeholder text. Why might you want to have placeholder text? Sometimes you don't have the copy all ready to go, but placeholder text is going to allow you to just basically have a placeholder so then you can format it. You can see what it's going to look like with your line spacing, with your font, your size, your color, the background, right? All that good stuff here. So I'm just going to do a very, very simple text box. Just click and drag. I let go. All right, and I have no text here. But I want to know what it's going to look like. So guess what? Right inside of my type menu, you will see there's an option way down at the bottom is fill with placeholder text, right? Everybody see that? Fill with placeholder text. Click on that and look at that. Just fills in with this kind of like dummy sort of Latin gobbledygook. All right, and you'll see, okay, this is what it's going to look like. Fantastic. All right, I can just replace that later on if I want to, but you see it's very easy just to fill it in also with some placeholder text. All right, so these last few things are just some good reminders and good sort of, finished polishings of all of your text elements, just to make sure that everything is sort of under control for you as you're working with type. So, like we've done in all of our other videos, what I want you to do is pause the video, practice everything we just did in this lesson. I want you to practice turning on your text threads. I want you to practice drawing out new text boxes. I want you to practice bringing in placeholder text. If you see the little red plus sign, I want you to move that someplace else, right? Just basically expand it out. I want you to make sure that you have no errors down below in case you have some overset text, and pretty much like keep an eye on that no matter what you do, because it could be links and images and all that good stuff as you're working on this to make sure that everything is pretty airtight when it comes time to finally publish. All right, have fun, and we'll see you in the next lesson. Earlier, we discussed the great phenomenon of working with object styles, where we can save the look and feel and the format of a particular object and then use it over and over again. And remember, object styles work on text boxes, on images, on shapes, any kind of like object type of object, right? Now, next thing we're going to talk about is paragraph styles. All right, now I have this newsletter template document open up, and I'm just going to show you this really great document and how it's all structured using paragraph styles. And we're going to be able to see this in action so we can see like, wow, that is phenomenal. How could I create something like this to be more efficient, okay, to be consistent, okay, to have some branding around it, and also just really expedite my processes, but using paragraphs this time instead of working with objects. So the first thing I want to do before I do anything at all is go over here to my window and go to styles and then bring up my paragraph styles. And I'm just going to just bring this over here, minimize this over here. And then you'll see that when I click on, let's say, for example, here on page 8, I go inside here, there is a paragraph style called titles, and that's what's set up here as well. Now you'll also notice in my properties panel that it also shows titles. So you can keep an eye on both of these. So this is in fact the paragraph style name that is associated with this. So what exactly does that mean? It's a saved format, right? With a whole bunch of things to make it this Acumen Pro, bold, 66 point, etc., etc. Let's take a look at another one. Let's come down here to where it says name here. This is staff name. What's this one? Oh, also staff name, also staff name. Oh, I see a pattern here. Because if I change my paragraph style and all the parameters associated with it, all three of these things will change, just like how I saw with my object style. Let's take a look at another one. Go over here to title. That's pretty cool. All right. What about this one? Oh, oversized titles and also oversized. Oh, that's another style. How cool is that? What's this one? This is titles again. Is there one for this one? Okay. Oh, cover page dates. Oh, man. All right. Everything is saved here as a style. Let's try this one. Subheading. Right? Nothing is left behind because guess what? I'm going to use this to make consistent and very quick and efficient changes on everything that's connected to this particular style. All right. And that's why I create styles. That's why I use styles. So I have a lot of these subheadings. All right. And my boss comes over and says, oh, listen, you know what? We're not going to use that font anymore. I'm like, oh, dude, are you serious? I have this on like 100 pages. Oh, but didn't you use a style? You know what? I did. Thank God I did. All right. So all you need to do is just change the style settings, and then it's going to change it for all of them. Oh, that's right. So let's just see it in action, and we're going to see how we can create them. So very simply, notice subheading is selected because my text is selected. I double click that. And now this is going to take me into my paragraph style options. It looks very different than my object style options, doesn't it? Okay. I think even easier to work with. You'll see the first thing you'll notice is all of my style settings. Basically, what is defining all of this, right? It's Acumen Pro, bold, 15 points, tracking of this. And it's okay, and it's centered. Okay, cool. That's fantastic, right? But I want to actually make a change to that. So if I go over to any one of these on the left-hand side, I can make a change by, let's say, going over here to basic character formats. And then watch what happens now when I make this a little bit bigger. Notice how all of them change. Let's make them smaller. Wait for it. Just trying to catch up a little bit. Okay, all the ones that are associated with it then get smaller. All right, I'm going to click OK. Now let's make sure that this, in fact, is subheading. There we go. Just take a little bit of time to catch up. Scared me for a second. And then notice how it changed across the board. Oh my God, that's amazing. Let's now go over here to one that I definitely saw a lot of. Go to here to title. Just simply double click on this. Great. And I can see there's all my settings there. That's 66, basic character formats. Oh, cool. And I can change. Let's just bring up the tracking a little bit. You'll notice how it's going to make it nice and big. Let's go over to here to case. Let's make that all caps. Great. Love that. That's going to be across the board. And then just for fun, let's go to a different one like our character color. And you can see this is actually all connected to some saved colors, right? So I can go to there and then bam, there it is. Or very simply, I can then double click on this T and then I can play around with some of my color parameters here just the same if you want to. We haven't really talked to this degree about colors yet, but I want you to at least know, in case you are comfortable with it, that you can either go to your swatches here or double click on it and then make some color changes here as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just click OK for right now. I love that. That's great. Now there's a lot of options that you can change within our paragraph style. Of course, it'll be up to you what you want to do. At this point, I want you to know A, that paragraph styles are awesome, how to identify them, how to manipulate them, right? And really ultimately to see the value in them, all right? Because soon in this next lesson, within this same video, we're going to learn how we can create them, all right? So let me go ahead and click OK, and let's just take a look at all of our other titles. Yep, all caps and yellow. Oh, look at that, all caps and yellow. Remember before? These were all black. And I made one change right here, and it changed it for all of them. All right, just phenomenal. So let's just now take a look at the document that we started with earlier, which is going to be our little recipes. All right. Now, I have no paragraph styles happening here, right? Nothing, 0, 0, 0. So everything, like when I click on this, is just a basic paragraph. Okay. Kind of boring. All right. Just this Minion Pro. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new style, based off of what I've either selected here, right? Very nice and easy. That's great. Or I can even just do it right here. I'm going to say basic paragraph, double click on it, and then I can make the change to whatever I want. Okay, so let's just go ahead and do the latter. I'm going to make this so my font is going to be something a little bit different. Let's come way back up on top here. I'm going to choose Berlin Sans, and you'll notice that everything changes to Berlin Sans. Let's make that Berlin Sans bold. Notice how everything does because they're all connected to that basic paragraph. I'm going to switch that back, maybe make that a little bit bigger. Okay, great. Maybe a little smaller. You can see how everything changes. And I'm going to simply click OK. And now that is going to be my basic paragraph. And that's going to be for everything. But I have a whole bunch of headings here. I've got a heading here, a subheading, etc. Let's now do that. Let's now create new headings and subheadings and save them as styles. First thing you want to do is create what you want it to look like on the front end, and then save your style in the paragraph styles panel, and then you can execute accordingly across the board. If that sounds familiar, it's literally the same thing we did with the object style. So let's now go ahead and just make some changes to this, just this particular one here. All right, make that nice and big. I'm going to make that all caps. That's great. And then let's just maybe bring up our tracking a little bit. And I'm also going to go over here to my paragraph, and I'm going to just say, hey, listen, I need a little bit of space after you because you're a title. You need all the room to stretch your arms out. Okay, that's fantastic. All right. And then maybe you want to change the color. So I'm going to go over here to this T, double click on it, choose whatever color you want. Maybe you want to add it to the swatches to save it. Totally up to you. Click OK. And there you have it. All right. And I love that. And I want that applied for everybody else. That's going to be a title. So very simply, with this still selected, hold down the Alt or Option key, click on Create New Style. And I'm just going to call this, actually, let's call this Recipe Categories. Great. And you can see there's verification of everything I just did. I'm not going to make any changes to it, but I am going to choose Apply Style to Selection, just like I said earlier for my object styles. And I'm going to click OK. Right? And there it is, Recipe Categories. Now, if we go down here, you're going to see that there's a number of different categories we can work with, like lunch dishes. That's a new category. So I'm going to say Recipe Category. Oh, look at that. Awesome. Let's try another one. Now let's go to sauce. Amazing. All right, let's try another one. We have a different kind of thing here. We got sauce. That's going to be a new one down over here. Let's say sides and appetizers. And notice I'm just clicking in there, and watch this. Bam, it does the whole paragraph. So awesome. And again, if I'm going to make a change, I can make a change directly to the style, and it's going to change everything associated with that style. All right, so absolutely amazing. So let's just do that, finish up that thought, and let's just make this a little bit smaller. And then just for fun, I'll show you one kind of neat thing while I'm here. This is known as a paragraph rule. I think you might appreciate. So just throw this in. So a paragraph rule, not like rule like a law. It's a rule as in like a line. So while I'm here, I'm just going to add on like a little line that's going to go underneath every single one of these. So it really makes it stand out. So you'll see here, paragraph rules, paragraph rules. Do I want my rule above the paragraph or below? I want it to be below, and just simply say rule on. That's kind of cool. All right, and then what's the weight going to be? How thick do I want that to be? All right, 3 points, not bad. And then do I want it to be the same color as my text? Yep, that's pretty good. And if If you go over to here, the right-hand side, you'll say, okay, I want this to be offset just a little bit by that much. And I'll see, oh, that's a little bit too much. Can't really see everything. My screen size, let's do perfect. I love that. And maybe some of you want to experiment with the type that you do. All right, so again, I can do wavy Japanese dots, any of these things, just like how we saw with our strokes. You can see, oh, that's kind of fun. I like that. And then you'll want to play around with that. All right, so I click OK. And now guess what? When I go back up to all my other ones, you will see everything that had that applied to it, my recipe category now has that wavy line going across the board. Why? Because of paragraph styles. All right, and you'll really want to just play around with this. There's so many different parameters that you can apply this in. In our next lesson, we're going to be getting into bullets and numbering, and we'll be able to see how we can also save those as paragraph styles. All right, so pause the video, practice what we've done here, working with paragraph styles, saving them, and then applying them across the board, and then making changes in our paragraph style to see the power. All right, see you in the next lesson. This lesson is going to be about working with bullets and numbering, and we'll see how easy it is to implement them, and then more importantly, how easy it is to then implement them across the board using our paragraph styles. All right, so how do we do that? So first thing I want you to notice is, again, when you select your text, right, I'm going to have these guys that I want to make into, my ingredients, right? This is what I need to have. Okay, that's great, fantastic. But then I need to find all my options for bullets and numbering. One of two places you're going to find it. So if we go way up on top here, you're going to see here's a bullet and here is number. The other place you're going to see it, of course, is in the properties panel. So let me just go ahead and move this up, move this here so you can see a little bit better. If you scroll down, you'll be able to see all kinds of different options, including bullets and numbering, and you'll also see some extra options that I can work with here. So just very simply highlight these, make them into bullets. Oh, that's easy. Make them into numbers. Oh, that's easy. Cool. Right? However you want to do that, that's great. Now, I don't really like how these are set up. In other words, like I want this to be a little more indented. I want them to be a little closer to each other. So that's where my options come in. So I click on that, and you're going to see how I have a lot of different options here in terms of the bullet character I want to use. I can change this from bullets to numbers very quickly, or just say none at all. Totally up to you. If you wanted to add in different kind of bullets, you can do that. If you click on add, you can kind of go hunting for them, just like different characters and graphics and stuff like that. That's not what we're going to get into here, but I encourage you to experiment with that. But what we're going to do here is have a little bit of control over our margins, essentially, in our indenting settings. So very simply, I'm just going to click on this, and you can see I can indent. Oh, I love that. Right? And then if I change this to first line indent, that's going to make the change of where the bullet is going to go. It's kind of strange language, but it gives me the option to really control it. So it's really all I need to know. And I love this, right? This is great. This is what I want to use for all of my bullets moving forward. I click OK. And guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to save this as a paragraph style. So I can just simply click on any one of these, doesn't matter. And hold down my Alt or Option key, click on the plus sign. I'm going to name this bullets, right? See all my settings there. Everything's all good. Click OK. And now watch this. I'm just going to highlight these guys here, and then very simply choose bullets. Looks exactly the same. So cool. Just tried another one. Just simply click and drag bullets. Okay, of course I can go on and on and on, but I really want you to see again another example outside of just basic text manipulation, how we can do it with bullets and numbering, and all of the margin and spacing options around working with bullets. All right, so definitely experiment with that. Now, let's see some other things we can work with paragraph styles that may help you out. All right, now if we go back to the document that we were in earlier, see here is our newsletter. I want you to notice that these have individual groupings in them, right, for different purposes. Okay, so once you start having a lot of styles, you may want to organize them, right, into this little new styles group. So very easy to do that, right? Once you have one, you just simply click on the folder option there, and then it's going to put it into a group for you. All right, so if I go over to here, and then maybe I'm just going to put these guys inside of a group. So hold down the Shift key, click on this, all right, and then drag them inside of here, and now I have a new style group. Highlight that, and then I'll just call this my basic style, whatever. Okay, and then I can then just start building out more and more and more. And as I create more paragraph styles, I can then put them inside of these groups. All right, so being organized, super important, super helpful, especially when you start working in a collaborative environment with other people. So you can see how helpful this is to be able to recognize where things are, what they're called, what their purpose is, etc. All right, so practice that. All right, if you haven't started working with styles yet, in terms of the paragraph styles or working with object styles, I highly encourage you to pause the video and really practice it and perfect it and get it into this sort of muscle memory for you and see how you can apply it in some of your own documents. All right, so pause the video, practice that, and we'll see you in the next lesson. All right, now that we have talked about object styles and paragraph styles, let's give a quick little nod over to character styles. All right, so character styles are unlike paragraph styles where it doesn't actually apply it to an entire paragraph. It just applies it either to just like one character or one word, but it's a little more precise over where you apply it. All right, so I'm going to show you how we can do it. It's pretty straightforward. I'm going to show you just a nice little trick you can do to make it kind of go across the board with all of that particular word you're looking for an example. All right, so let's just say, for example, I have the word eggs inside of here, and every time I have the word eggs in there, I want it to be a certain color and all that good stuff here. All right, so again, I'm going to do this on the front end like I've done in the past. All right, so I'm going to make this bold. Okay, that's great. And then let's just make this a different color. Just make that stand out. All right, and lovely. That's great. Now I'm going to make that into a style. So I have it highlighted, and then oops, wait, this is my paragraph style. I don't want to do a paragraph style based off of this. So what do I need to do? Oh, that's right. We're working with character styles. So I don't need this one anymore. So let's just go ahead and dock this over there. Go over to my window and come down here to styles and bring up character styles. Understand the distinction. Let's bring this over here. And then notice this has none. There is no character style associated with this yet until I now create it. So making sure that what you just created on the front end is selected, hold down the Alt key or Option key on the Mac, click on Create New Style, and I'm just going to call this eggs. Great. And then you can see, bam, there it all is there. Okay, that's great. I can, of course, make some changes to this, whatever you want to do, and I'm good to go. All right, and that's all that is. All right, I've just made that. And that could really be applied to anything. I just arbitrarily call that eggs because like I could make this also say that as well. I don't want to do that. But just understand what we can do for character styles where it could just be one word. Now, I want every instance of the word eggs that's inside of our, our main paragraph here to have the same color here and have that all same stuff here. So I'm going to show you a nice little trick that's working with find and replace. Find and replace. Some of you maybe worked with find and replace in other capacities where you're finding a word and you're replacing it with another word. It could be like, a company, right? Your new product, right? A new employee. You're just saying, okay, Bob doesn't work here anymore, but now Mary does. Great. Replace Bob with Mary. Oh, that's fantastic, right? You can do that in InDesign, absolutely. So I'm going to show you that basic part, but I'm also going to show you how you can find every instance of the word eggs and replace not the word, but the style. Replace the format of it. So if we go over to here to edit, you're going to see here's an option for find and change. And also notice here is the Control F option or Command F on the Mac. And what am I looking for? I am looking for the word eggs. Great. And you can see here it says change to what? I'm not changing anything. So this really should be blank. All right. That's great. So I'm not really changing the words. What am I changing? I'm changing the format. All right. Now you can also see there's some other kind of like advanced parameters here, including case sensitive. So I don't want it to change any of the caps. So I'm going to just say it's case sensitive. And then I'm going to say, hey, change the format of eggs. I'm not changing the words, so this should be blank. And I'm going to click on this. And you'll notice what's going to pop up. It's asking me in very simple language, well, do you want to change the character style? Oh, yes, I do. I want to change it to eggs. Look at that. There's only one option available for me. That's the only one I created. So it's pretty straightforward. I click OK. And if you read this, it says here, find what? Find eggs and make sure it's case sensitive. So it's going to be the small e. And then make sure it's going to be the character style of eggs for all of them. Right? So let's see it in action. I'm going to say change all. What? 19 replacements and it found all the eggs. Oh my God, that is huge. Love that. Click OK. Click done. Oh my God, that is amazing. Are there other eggs here? Yes, there's eggs there. Right? It finds all the instances of eggs in my entire document. So I don't have to do that. So really, really slick. And then guess what? If I make this change to say, hey, listen, we're going to actually change the color of the eggs character style. Go over to here to my character color. And this time, let's just make it green. And you can see that I got my green eggs and ham all set up, ready to go. And again, I worked with styles, but this time it's a character style. And I showed you how you can do it in kind of a slick way, working with find and replace. So you'll definitely want to practice that. Pause the video, see how that works for you. And then if you haven't noticed, I also created some other sub paragraph styles. So you want to kind of challenge yourself, stretch yourself out a little bit, and see what you can do with working with your paragraph styles, not just what I showed you here with this big one, but then go a little bit deeper with those, and then practice what I did with my eggs, working with the find and replace, and then also try some other ones. Find your document, and then see what you can do to really hone your skills and get this muscle memory, perfect it, and then make your life and your job that much easier. All right, we'll see you in the next lesson. So we're going to switch up gears a little bit and start talking about color. You'll see that in pretty much every document you work with, color is going to have an important appeal and visual interest for a variety of different reasons. It could be the type you're working with, it could be a shape, right? It could be little objects here, it could be something that you're even drawing if you have the illustration skills. So earlier we talked about the different types of colors you might want to choose. RGB, you're going to work with if it's going to be just for the web or for screen, and you're going to work with CMYK if it's going to be for print. Okay, so you really want to know what your medium ultimately is going to be, because you might be a little bit disappointed if you choose the wrong one and you send it to the printer and it doesn't look the way you want it to look. All right, so just establish that. I'm going to show you how we can change some of those things as we're actually creating our colors as well. All right, now we have a few different places that we can change our colors. All right, so you can see here is my color picker right over here very easily. And remember how we have our fill color and we also have our stroke. You'll also notice that I can do it up on top here. And also you'll notice here is my appearance. Now, there's a few other panels we can work with as well. So if we go over here to window, you can see here is color. And there's going to be a color panel we can work with. Let's bring that out. And let's go over here to window again, color, and let's bring up our swatches. Great, let's go ahead and just dock those. So they're all kind of one and the same here for us to work with. All right. Now, if I click on this right here, you're going to see this is currently the color that I'm working on, right? So if I click over to here, notice how this changes to a T. That's telling me that is I'm working with type that is black. All right. Let me go over to here. This is type that is this nice little orange color. Great. You can see there's a T there. There's a T there. there's a T there. Okay, so it's constantly sort of talking to us and letting us know kind of what's what. Now, if I want to change this to a different color, I can very easily do that in a number of different ways. I can come over to here, double click, and then choose a color, right? Bam. And then you can see this is my previous color. This is going to be the next color, the one I just chose. Let me cancel that. Come over to here, double click, same thing. And all my color options pop up just the same. And then I'm going to go over to here, and you'll see slightly different thing pops up because it's giving me all my what we call our swatches, which we're going to explore. But again, I can then just simply double click on this, and it takes me right to my color picker. Now, there's going to be times when you want to actually choose a color from the actual canvas itself, and we're going to be exploring that in just a second. All right, so let me now go ahead and just apply a color, right? You can see very easily, I click OK, and now that shape has now changed color. All right, that's great, right? Wonderful, love that. Well, let me do that one more time. And let me just choose this-ish color, kind of bright yellow. Now, what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to show you how you can put in your RGB value, if you know it, or your CMYK value, or your hexadecimal code value, if you know what those things are. You just type them in, and you're good to go. All right, you can also change your hue, saturation, and brightness, right? Or if you're working with any of these settings here, you can change those too. If you're that advanced or your company's working with them, you can change all of these options here, and then it's going to know essentially what to do for you. All right, now that is an option for us. But what I'm going to do next is, because I love this color so much, right? Let's just say I've put in my RGB value and I'm good to go. I can now add this, actually it's going to be CMYK, right? I can add this, right, as my CMYK value, right, as a swatch, okay, as a swatch, right, because I want to save it, right? That's what swatches are about. They're basically just saved colors. So I love that. That's great. I click OK. And now, all right, that's pretty cool, but where did it go? Right? It's here, but I want to use it for all my other documents, right? So if you go, or all my other objects, that is. So if you go over here to swatches, you will see it then gets added to my swatches panel. Do you see that there? Right? Now, fantastic. There it is. I don't like how it's called it, but you can see it says, okay, C equals 14, M equals 8, etc. So really what I want to do now is make a change to that. So I'm just going to go ahead and click once on it and then click again. It's kind of this double click but slow motion. I'm just going to call this lemon yellow sun. All right, I love that. Now let's see it in action, because now that I've saved this, I can apply this in many, many different contexts. So let me go over to here to this guy. I click on my drop down, and guess what's waiting there for me at the bottom is lemon yellow sun. All right, and I can keep doing that over and over and over again. Okay, that's great. Of course, you may know about paragraph styles at this point, and you'd know that I can then actually apply this using my paragraph style rather than doing it directly on here. All right, if we go to my paragraph style, you'll see that that is also talking to my swatches. Okay, so you'll be able to see that all these things have a nice relationship with each other. So I know that this is the titles paragraph style, and when I open that up and I go into my character color, you'll notice that there is now lemon yellow sun that lives inside of here. Why? Because it's a swatch. All right, so I click on that to apply lemon yellow sun. I click OK, and guess what's going to happen? Everything that has this paragraph style of titles associated with it now has the lemon yellow sun. All right, so really cool, really slick. All right, so again, working with swatches, which is a saved color, working with paragraph styles, which is a saved format. So that way I have that kind of efficiency. All right, so my goal here is to really make you efficient and use InDesign in the way it's meant to be used. All right, so that is how we work with, basically creating our basic colors. All right, that's fantastic. How we can save them. We can put in our RGB value or CMYK value, okay, and then save them as swatches and then incorporate them into our paragraph styles. All right, great. So that should help you with that. Now, you also may want to work with the color panel, right? Which might be a little bit more confusing for some of you. But I'll just show you kind of just like a little bit of a different way that you could use this. Okay, so I'm going to go over to here and you'll see that I'm going to be able to manipulate this right here to be able to kind of make, okay, that's good, but I'm not seeing all my colors. So I'm showing you this because this is going to happen a lot. Like, it doesn't work that great with colors. So if I go over to here to my little flyout menu and I choose CMYK, oh, my flyout menu is kind of hiding everything right in there for me to then access every single color. Then I can make my changes here on the fly. This is only if you want to work with the color panel. Totally up to you, however you want to do this, really. I mean, it's just up to you. You can work with the color picker. You can work with color if you want to. The color panel, that is. But again, really, really totally up to you. All right. Now, what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to basically use the color picker to then just steal this color. So you can see how that's going to work. So I have this still selected. Come over to here. And then instead of doing any of these options here, I'm going to use this little eyedropper. So how do you do that? You simply want to hold down and click and drag to grab what you want. Don't let go. It's not like Photoshop where you can just click it once. You literally just click on there, and now it's got my color. I click OK, and see, now I've applied it. And that could be anything that's on your document, all right, that you just kind of grab that color. All right, so practice that. Practice with colors, working with our swatches, all the things I said, the RGB, the CMYK, all that good stuff, and see how it all relates to your paragraph styles. Work with the eyedropper tool, and then playing around with different ways that you can actually access your colors, right? Because notice how there's a whole bunch in kind of different places that you can do it just the same, right? So totally up to you. Now, we're going to take a little break for you to practice, and we come back, we're going to work with gradients. All right, so have fun, and we'll see you in the next lesson. In the last lesson, we talked about basic colors, working with swatches, saving our colors, working with CMYK and RGB, and all that good stuff. In this lesson, we're going to talk about working with gradients. Now, what you're looking at here is a gradient where we're basically making one kind of like graduation from white to gray to black. Right? Sometimes you're going to want to do that just for kind of like texture, for visual interest, for kind of dimensionality. Right? So you might want to do that just for a variety of different purposes, just to be able to kind of make things a little more kind of animated, right? Less sort of static. All right. And this is, obviously not what you'd create. I just want you to see what you can actually do with it. Right? And you've probably seen gradients across the board in many other capacities. So now our goal is to show you how you can create them. So I'm just going to delete this and go back to more or less what you may be looking at when you come into InDesign. So if you look in the lower left of your toolbar here, you're going to see this little guy right here has the gradient. Okay, basically it's saying apply gradient as opposed to what? As opposed to a color. So when I click on that, I now actually switch up from solid color mode to gradient mode. Oh, that's kind of cool. Wow. So before I even click and do anything right now, I should probably bring up my options for gradients, and that is going to be, again, under window. I'm going to go to color. I'm going to choose gradient, and guess what? I'm going to bring up the dreaded color panel. All right, and I want to discourage you. I understand it's a little bit kind of less than par, maybe subpar a little bit, but once you kind of harness it, you'll understand how things work. So I'm just going to go ahead and just bring this together. All right, and it's going to be very important that you kind of have these guys together so you can see how they work together. All right, it's kind of important and not super intuitive. It's important you kind of stick with me on this lesson of working with gradients and how the gradient panel works with the color panel pretty well. Now, you'll see here with my gradient panel, I have two colors here. I have my black and my white. All right, so if I were to draw something out right now, I'd have a very similar gradient that I drew out earlier with my black and my white. All right, and you'll see I can choose different types of gradients, linear or radial. We'll explore those, the different angles. You can reverse it, going from white to black and vice versa. All right, so let's just now draw it out with just using a very basic rectangle. All right, and you can say, all right, that's what that does. All right, that's kind of interesting. And now if I then reverse it, you can see it just reverses. Okay, I can change the angle too. I'm just going to make this, let's say, 90 degrees. I hit tab. All right, that's great. I'm going to show you a little bit easier way to do that in just a second, but you can play around with this, right? Now, what we're going to do next is we're just going to change the color of these, right? Let's just say you want to make like this nice kind of blue sky or a night sky or twilight or something like that. You can do that by changing these colors here. All right, so when I choose this here, when I click on this, you'll notice how this now changes from whatever it was before, just a white or black or whatever, to the CMYK. So I'm just going to drag this over here and drag this over there and get this nice kind of dark blue color, right? That's pretty sweet. I like that, right? And that was pretty easy, right? But watch what happens when I choose the black. Uh-oh. The options go away, right? Because black isn't part of that kind of CMYK discussion. It's not part of that spectrum. So when I click on this again, remember from the last lesson, my little flyout menu here, then I choose CMYK, then I'm going to be able to actually control it. I'm going to go over to here to just choose which color I want. And then let's make that even darker. So you can say, okay, cool, nice kind of like night sky situation. And then I reverse that. That's even better, right? Because the light's coming from above or whatever it is, right? So who knows? Okay, so just experiment with that, like where's the sun coming from, etc. Now, you can also control how much of which color you get as well. So you can now click on this little diamond and you see now I'm getting a little more light, right? What is that actually communicating? All right, love that. That's awesome. Right. Now, you can also add on more gradient stops if you want to. So I'm just going to click in the middle and then make this guy just maybe go red. Ooh, that's interesting. Let's play around with my diamonds. Okay. Very, very different story here. Okay, something's happening, right? A little bit different because now I just added on a third color. All right, so let me now just go back to my selection tool. Let's make this a little bit bigger. You can see as I make this bigger, things are going to get a little bit more interesting, a little bigger canvas for me to play around with. But now, so far it's given me these kind of very sort of, static options. And I can play around with the angle if I want to. I can play around with my diamond, etc. But what I'd like to do is now change kind of the direction and the kind of magnitude of my gradient. And I'm going to do that by using this guy right here called the Gradient Swatch Tool. Everybody see where that is? The Gradient Swatch Tool. You can find that there. And watch what that's going to do. With my shape selected, I'm going to come over to here and I'm going to get this crosshair as my mouse. Just watch what happens when I just click and drag going from one corner to the other. That controls my gradient. And now notice my angle is now negative 21.2 degrees. Oh, I didn't do that, but it did it for me. I click on that and notice how it's going to change. I'm going to go to here. Just notice where I begin, where I end, going diagonal right here in the middle. Oh man, that's cool. It looks like a planet, right? I'm like out in outer space. Cool. Whatever you want to do, you can absolutely control this, okay? Using, guess what? This Gradient Swatch Tool. All right, so let me just relegate this to something else. Move this over here. And now let me just do a quick little ellipse. And you're going to see it just remembers the last thing I did. And why am I doing an ellipse this time? Doing an ellipse because I want to change my type from linear to radial. And I'm going to reverse that. And you can see, ooh, that is very interesting. And see how radial is like a rounded gradient, which is going to allow me to have kind of like different effects. Okay, I can change the color, of course. Do whatever you want to do. Let's do that one more time, just for some review. Let's go ahead and just go, again, kind of a lighter blue. It's going to go to a darker blue. All right, it's kind of nice. And you can even like go a step further, add on another gradient here, and then just make that black, and you kind of have this like nice little kind of edge to it. So you kind of want to be maybe a little more artistic about this, right? It's up to you, right? Just play around with it. But then I'm going to go over to my gradient swatch tool, click and drag, and let's just see what that does. All right, let me just start way off the canvas and see just a slightly different look and feel. Let me just do like kind of a perfect one like that. It's kind of nice. Maybe we'll start right in the middle. What's that going to do? Oh yeah, okay, that's kind of where I started, but just know what it's going to do. All right, see how it's coming in from the center, going white to a little bit darker blue to this kind of dark purple all the way to black. So you have a lot of control to be able to then manipulate this. Now, if we look at some of our elements here, you might want to do something like that for this. If I just change this now to a whole different look, let me just change this to linear, and I'll just make this swatch be yellow, and I'll make this be maybe a little bit of a darker yellow or a lighter yellow, whatever you want to do. And you can see, again, a little bit more kind of visual interest, or it kind of like the light shines down on it. Okay, so you'll see how you have all that kind of control to be able to manipulate the look and feel, the color of your shape for a variety of different reasons. Okay, so gradients are really powerful for visual interest and for kind of drawing the audience's attention towards something. Just make something look a little less flat, really. All right, so practice that. You may need to watch this video a few times just to get it, and then just understand how the gradient tool works in conjunction with color and how you work with the individual stops, the diamonds, how you can reverse them, and then finally, of course, working with this gradient swatch tool to then control the direction and the magnitude of that thing that you're working with. All right, so play around with that, pause your video, have fun, and we'll see you in the next lesson. Welcome back, everybody. We are now going to start talking about master pages. We've talked about regular pages so far, how to insert them, delete them, just kind of navigate throughout our document. And now we're going to talk about the master pages, right? So let's just define what a master page is, and then we're going to explore how we can sort of deconstruct this document and then even create some of our own. So master pages allow us to work with repeating elements for the most part. Like you might want to repeat a page number, right? On every single page, you want to go from 4 to 5 to 6, right? And notice how the words are repeating. Okay, that's great. You also want to repeat other things like a little design element, like a stripe or something like that. Could be a line going across. Anything like that, you want it to kind of repeat. Sometimes you might want to even have like a little title that you can have that go across as well, and it's always going to go in that section. But now you may have documents that are going to be contingent upon different actual masters because you want to have different things happen at different times. Could be that you're going to have blanks, right? Maybe you don't actually want to have anything on a cover page, or a page that's going to have like a big map or a chart. You don't want it to be all kind of cluttered up with page numbers or, headers and footers and things like that. So you may want to have just nothing on that master. So you're going to have to mix things up a little bit. So on the top part of our pages panel, we're going to see this section here, which is going to be all about our masters. So this particular document actually has 5 masters, and one is actually what's called none. But you'll notice that there's a prefix for all of these, A, B, C, D, and look at this, A, B, see that? There's B. We can just highlight that for you. Let's come down a little bit more. And if we keep scrolling down, we're going to see C, and we're going to see D. Okay, now each of these pages are linked up to some of these masters. Okay, so there's A, and that's linked up to A. That's great. Now let's take a look at B, and you will see that B is linked up to this B. But now let's get under the hood and see what in fact is going on inside of all of these that's making these pages behave the way they are. So if I double click on this little thumbnail here, that's going to take me inside of this A master, and I'll be able to see, oh, there's some elements there. And if I go over here to the right-hand side, I'll be say, okay, there's some other elements over there. And that's all repeating across the board for everything that's linked up to those. All right, let's go ahead and go back to another one. Let's go over here to C. You can see similar. Okay, so creating this document may have some similarities, may have some other things that are a little more subtle, but just understand again that they're repeating elements. Now, if I go back to my main document, I'm going to go back to page 2. And then what if I try to move this? What if I try to change the color of this? What if I just try to even basically select it? I can't do it. Let me go to my page number. Nope, can't do it, can't do it, can't do it. Why? Because it's on the master. If you want to manipulate, edit, control any of these things that are on the master, you have to actually be in the master. You can't necessarily do it right from here. There are more advanced ways to do that. I'm going to talk about that in our advanced class, but sometimes you might want to have like a placeholder or something. We're going to talk about that in future lessons in our advanced InDesign class. But for right now, let's just discuss what in fact is going on and how we can maybe manipulate this. What can we do now to maybe just make things a little more kind of interesting? Let's go back to our A master. I'm going to double click on that. And you'll notice now I can actually click on the shape if I want to. Let me change the color of that to this nice little pretty blue color. Wonderful. All right, let me do the same thing with this guy here. Let's go over here back to that pretty blue color and do it one more time. Great. I think I'm good for now. What is that going to do for my document? I just made a change in the master. What can you expect? Everything that's connected to this A master will now have that change. So if I look at this document now, you'll see there's blue. Come down to the bottom, there's blue, and there's blue. Amazing. Okay, you see how that goes across the board. Now, if I want to go over here to B, is that affected? Nope. All right, so you'll need to understand how your masters are all constructed, what's linking up to what. So when things don't do something, you understand essentially why it's not doing something. All right, these little kind of subtle whispers to tell you that like this in fact is only related to the A master, right? You see that? These are only related to the A. So we'll need to understand what's going on when things are not acting the way we want them to. All right. So let's now see how we can implement masters on another document. What do we need to do? Something that we've been working with, hopefully since the beginning, is working on this little cookbook. I might want to have some running elements on all my pages. Okay, could be a basic shape like this, could be words at the bottom, and also page numbers, which I'm going to show you how to do in just a second. Okay, so let's go to that document that we've been working on, our little cookbook here. And let's say I want to have a running page number on every part of the bottom, but I also wanted to say, you know, Dave's Cayenne Cookery, right? Something like that. I want that on every single bottom of the page. You will see here, my masters, I only have one master and they're all A right now, right? And that's pretty much all I need right now, but I will show you how we can do a separate one when we create a title page. So maybe I'm going to have an A and also another one just I can call anything I want, just call it 1, because that's going to be a title page separate from the rest of these because I don't want a page number on it. So what I'm going to do is go into my A master very simply, just simply double click on it. And guess what? I'm in the master. How do I know I'm in the master? Let's take a look way down here and you will see it says A master right down there. So I know that I'm currently in the master. In case you're ever confused, if you're still inside of just page 1, you can just double click on A master and you're going to see, bam, it's going to say A master. So you know where you are. For those of us who are just beginning, that can be a little bit confusing because they might even look very similar to each other. So I am going to just bring in some text on the left-hand side, and I'm also going to show you how you can do a page number someplace else. So just like with anything else, I'm going to do my text box here and just draw it out and just type out Dave's Cayenne Cookbook and whatever you want to do with that. I'll bold that and I'll make that come down a little bit more. Great. Good to go. Don't need all that right there. So I'll bring this in. All right. Love it. Now that is going to be on every single page at this point. Okay. But it's going to be on every single page that's on the left side of the spread, because look where I am here. Now, if you scroll to the right, you'll be able to see the right side does not have anything at all. So these, the left spread and the right spread, are separate and independent from each other. So we're going to work that out in just a little bit. So what's my next goal is on the right-hand side, I'm going to bring in a page number. All right. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a nice little kind of cheat on this. I'm just going to click on this, hold down the Alt key, which we've done before, and then also hold down the Shift key and just drag this over to the right-hand side. So why did I do that? Because I essentially don't want to have to recreate the font. I don't want to have to recreate the alignment and all that good stuff. And this is all pretty much ready to go for me to insert a placeholder for my page numbers. Some of you may have seen earlier that your page numbers actually just had a letter in there. Like, that was weird. Is it page A? How does it know what to do? That A is just simply a placeholder for all of the pages that are connected to the A master. So what I'm going to do is just simply highlight this so it's all selected. And guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to go over here to the type panel way up on top here, right? The type menu, and then that spills down all the way to the bottom to where we have this insert special character. All right, so let's do that. So type, insert special character, and we're going to go over here to markers, and then guess what? Current page number. And what I'm going to do next is right align that. And I'm going to put the word page in front of it. Don't have to do that, but I want it to show like that. That's great. No problems there. And before I go any further, I want to check this out. What in fact is going on with my master? Is this doing what I want it to do? So guess what? Double click on the right side. What's going to happen here? Nothing. Why? Because this is on the right side of the spread. If I go over to page 2 and 4 and 6, absolutely, something should be there. I scroll down. Look at that. It knows exactly what page it is, and it repeats the elements of exactly what I've typed out. So let's see without all the markings. Wonderful. That's great. Love it, love it, love it. I'm going to go back to my master, double click on that. And now I can start building this out on this side if I want to. All right, so on this side, I'm going to take both of these elements, and guess what I'm going to do? I'm just going to clone them. All right, hold down the Alt key and the Shift key. Put that back in place. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and just scroll back over to here, and let's just say 2021 edition. Cool. But I still want the page number over there on the right-hand side. That's great. So let's check it out. I'm going to go back over to page 1 now, and I'll see, there it is. Okay. And I scroll down a little bit, and I'll be able to see there's page 2, page 3, 2021 edition. All right, well, what about these guys over here? Yep, that's still there. Love that. All right, so let's just do a couple more. Let's just do some kind of fun design elements as we showed you earlier. Let's go back to our A master. But this time, let's just draw maybe a line that's going straight across, right? Maybe it just separates it out a little bit. So I'm going to click on the little line tool, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key and just click and drag straight across, holding down the Shift key to make it perfectly straight. And then if I need to, I can make that go a little bit further out. Just bring that off the canvas a little bit, making sure it's thick enough. And let's check her out. How's that going to look? Going across the board, hit the W key. That's pretty good. Separates everything out. I like that. Let's take a look at this. Oh yeah, it goes across. It's exactly what I want. It's going to be on every single page, just like that. All right. Now, the last thing I want to do here is now create a new master, because I'm going to have a cover page in front of this that I don't want to have all that stuff on there. All right, so watch what happens now. I'm going to say right click, insert page. I want to do one page before page 1. And you'll notice here that it's linking up to what master? It's linking up to the A master. And how many choices do I have? Either none or A master, right? I'm not going to choose none because I want you to just see what it's like to create a new master from scratch. You could do none, but I like to have at least something there just because I might want to add something to that, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and just say, at this point, A master, it's going to be before it. And now new page is here. And that has that on there, right? Notice how it's an A. What I'm going to do is create a new master that's going to link up to this. So how do you create a new master? It's very, very easy. See this little gray area right there? Just go ahead and right click, and not too many choices here is new master. And I'm just going to call this one 1. I'm just going to call this cover. All right, that's great. And it's asking me, all right, so what is this based on? Is it based on any other master? You could do that. You could base it off of another master, meaning that it's going to inherit all of its features, but then you can then just sort of evolve away from that and do your own elements if you want to. So if I did do this based off of that A master, it would take all the page numbers and all that stuff, but then I can add on to that if I wanted to. But what's cool about this is that if A changes, that element that it inherited also affects this new master, if you wanted to do that. All right, you can experiment with that. In our advanced class, we get into a little bit more of that stuff. All right, so how many of these pages do I want? I think I just want 1. Just see what that looks like. Okay, pretty much good to go here. I'm going to click OK. And you'll see this now says 1 cover, right? As opposed to A master, because I named it 1 cover. Your prefix could be pretty much anything you want. Now, I want this guy to live here. In other words, I want page 1 to only have the 1 cover master and not the A master. So how do I do that? Super, super easy. Just simply click, drag right on top of it, and now look at that. It says 1 instead of A. And now I'm going to double click on this one to go right to that page, and you'll see it's blank, all ready to go. And then if I scroll down, see it's separate from the other ones. Okay, and it's telling you it right there. All right. Now, I could then go right into here and then bring in whatever kind of content I want, build it out, put some type in there, put in an image, all that stuff. And again, it's not going to have any other elements down below. All right. Now, what I'd like to do next is change this. I don't really like calling this A master. I'm going to call it something else. I'm going to keep the A, but I don't really like that name. So what I'm going to do very simply is right click on it. A lot of options pop up for masters, right? Duplicate the master, delete the master. Maybe you want to print the master for whatever reason. Here's another option to do a new master. But what I'm going to choose is master options. And when I click on that, very simply, it gives me the choice. Well, what do you want to call it? What's the prefix you want? So I'm just going to call this A main body, just like that, right? Say okay. And now look at that. A main body, still A. And I'm ready to go just to do whatever I want from now on. Okay, have that kind of control. So if, for example, I was going to do a new page and I wanted it to now have just the cover in there, because let's say I'm doing a new section, you know, if every time I do like a new recipe or something like that, I'm going to have a nice big picture on there. I can very easily do that. So if I right click here, I say insert page, I only want to do 1 page, and it's going to be after page 8. I would say that I want it to be just the 1 cover master, not A, because notice now I have 2 choices, and it's going to be, bam, it's going to be right here, replacing whatever page 9 is. Click OK, and look at that. Now I've mixed it up. 1, and then A, all across the board, and then fantastic. There we have it, master 1 cover. All right, so hopefully now you really start to see the value of this, right? Whether you're working on somebody else's document, whether you're working on any other documents that I presented for you, right? Looking at this document. And you can see how much you can really go into creative ways and very functional ways for you as well. Whether it's page numbers, little design elements, a little bit of text, and also mixing things up a little bit where you might want to have something for a cover for your regular topics, right? For your regular body copy, and then some. So you'll want to experiment with it. You'll know kind of what your documents are sort of dictating. So pause the video, practice that, really understand how we can change our masters, create our masters, apply our masters, get into the masters, tinker with them, bring in page numbers, and maybe you have some other creative ideas. So love to see some of your comments in the chat, and we will see you in the next exercise. But practice up, pause the video, and have fun. Now, hopefully at this point, you are comfortable enough with InDesign to start making some preference changes of your own. You're starting to learn a little bit more about the program as far as what you want things to look like, your units of measure, the color, and maybe you're starting to see some kind of like funkiness around InDesign in terms of like how your computer is performing. Maybe you want to get into some like spell check options, and you want maybe things to be a little bit more like Word or something like that, and it's not. Maybe some of you don't want it to be like Word at all. Okay, so let's just see what we can do just to tinker a little bit with some of our preferences. And this will be something that you'll go back to time and time again as you start to learn more about the program, all right? And then some of these things you'll probably never look at because they're pretty good, or it might just be like way beyond any of your needs. So how do you get to your preferences? If you're on a PC, you simply just go to Edit, and then Preferences down here, and you'll see here's all of our options. If you're on a Mac, you simply go over here to the InDesign menu in the upper left and choose Preferences. So I'm going to go to Preferences, and I'm going to go over to here to Interface. And you can see here, these are my preferences for my interface. What does that mean? I can now change this to this kind of nice darker one. I can go medium light. I can go a little bit brighter. So you do have all those nice options for you to work with, right? Depending on what your preferences are. Okay, that's why we're in preferences. Okay, you can also see you can match your pasteboard to the theme color, so it's going to then kind of blend in a little bit kind of smoother as you do that, right? As you're working with these, you might want that, but sometimes it can make it harder to see. So totally up to you. All right. Now you'll also see a few other options as far as our panels are concerned. Okay, do you want some of these panels to auto hide? Do you want to open up as tabs? Do you want them to be large tabs or not? So you'll be able to see if I click on large tabs, notice how that shrinks down a little bit, right? I'll bring that back and you say, okay, fantastic. Right, if I click on that one, right? You see it says open documents as tabs. Next time you start opening them up, they will not be as tabs, they'll be as separate windows, okay? Again, totally up to you. And also one of the first things we did was make our floating tools panel as a double column, but again, totally up to you. Maybe you want it to be a single row, maybe you want it to be just a single column, all right? So that's gonna be able to be affected very easily as well. All right, let's come over here to our units and increments. Right, so some of you in the beginning maybe had to change from picas or millimeters or pixels or whatever. Remember where you were at before and you didn't like it? You can always make a permanent change to make it be what you want it to be, right? So in other words, if it always comes as picas, I can change this to inches, and respective to all these other ones do the same thing. Now, understand that if you want to make a global change, you should have no documents open when you do this. Right? Very important, because if you make a change right now, it's only going to affect that particular document. So you should have nothing open, then go make your change. That said, if you open up a document that was previously created using picas, you're still going to have to make the changes. Okay, and of course you can do it from here, but also I showed you how you can right click in this little nexus, and then it'll change to whatever that unit of measure is going to be. All right. You'll see also, I like this one here, is this cursor key, because I like to nudge things. What does that mean? With my cursor, if I want something to move, if I just kind of nudge with my arrows, it's just going to go that far. And maybe some of you have already seen me do this, but when you hold down the Shift key while tapping on the arrow keys, you'll see that it's actually going to go 10 times farther than whatever these settings are. All right, so if you want it to be very, very precise, you would make this part smaller. All right, so of course you'll experiment with that. All right, let's take a look also at our spelling. All right, you can see here, find what? When you're doing a spell check, what do you want it to do? Find misspelled words, repeated words, etc. Maybe some of these things you don't care about, so you can just very much uncheck them. You also see here is the option for dynamic spelling. Some of you may actually have this unchecked. So therefore, it's not actually giving you a red squiggly line as you're bringing in and typing out misspelled words, but some of you may want that. And that's kind of coming back to like how Word does it by default. You may not have that checked, so therefore it is not going to give you the little red squiggly line. All right, and you can see some other options as well. And maybe you don't want it in red, you want it in magenta, you want it in violet, whatever it is, you have all those options. Now also is this autocorrect option. Okay? Do you want it to autocorrect for you based off of all these millions and millions of words that it has in its dictionary? Usually by default, this is not selected. So if you want it to do that, you can absolutely enable this. All right, and then maybe one or two other things here is this display performance. All right, if your computer is running like too fast or too slow, because you have two heavy documents, right, that are running in your system as you are building off this document, because you have like, you know, these like massive files, and InDesign is still having to link up to these, it could actually show something that's very high resolution and then still slow down your computer. Even though you're linking up, you want to check that out. All right, so you can actually make some changes to that. So you can say, hey, listen, just show me the fast view. But then when you finally do publish it, when you do package it, it's going to give you the high quality. This is just for your viewing. How do you want to do that? Okay. And I'll show you in a second how we can do that kind of on the fly as well if you ever need to do that. Okay. So typical could be good for you, but it all depends on your computer's processing power. All right. So definitely check that out. Have fun with it. All right. Now let's also go to file handling. You will see here file handling. Some things you might be interested in is, okay, number of recent items to display, 20, maybe more, maybe less, totally up to you. You'll also see that there's this really nice option to create links when placing text and spreadsheet files. Earlier, we talked about links by linking up images. You might want to also have links where you can see, hey, somebody brought in a Word file or an Excel sheet, something like that. You might want to see how that has been brought in, if it's been brought in, where it lives, all that good stuff. And it's going to show in the links panel. By default, this is not chosen. So if you want it to be shown, then you will need to check this box. All right, so let's just see a couple of things now on the front end. I'm going to click OK. And once you see where we're going to find our options for spell check. If you click on Edit, you'll see about a little more than halfway down is the option for spelling. And you can see here is dynamic spelling, and autocorrect is checked because that's what I have it set up in my preferences. You can then do check spelling right now if you like, and it's going to run you through a little spell check. And it's going to be hopefully familiar to you if you've worked in any other spell check program before. And you just go right through it, take the suggestions or leave it, totally up to you. And finally click done. And you also notice that under edit is a few other options like find and replace. We did a few exercises on that before with our character styles. Okay, so pretty nice. Just play around with all these to experiment and definitely use those to make sure you have no spelling mistakes. And the other thing I told you about is the ability to work with our images. Okay, so earlier we talked about how the fact that sometimes our images are going to come in. Let me just go ahead and do Control 0. Come over to this side here. And earlier we talked about our display handling of our images, because sometimes things are not coming in good, sometimes they are, and we want to be able to see it at the best quality, because I just need to know, is this really good? Is this as good as it can be? And if you recall from our links discussion, we can see, hey, this particular document is 6.7 megabytes, right? Which is pretty big. It's also 300 ppi. Okay, so it should be coming in good quality, but it could also be making my computer run a little slow. So if I right click on this, you'll see way down at the bottom is this display performance. And you can see it's using the view setting. But if I've got a lot of these, it could certainly be clogging up my system. So I might want it just to be fast display. Okay, and then, that's not very good. So I can just undo that. I'll just do typical display, or maybe you're going to do high quality display. All right, so of course the fast display just kind of took it all away, right? Okay, well, if you ever see a document like this, you'll know like, oh wait, is there nothing there? Or did somebody just turn off the display performance from typical and high quality? And I could always bring it back. So that's just kind of a good little tip to know about in case your computer's running a little bit slow, or you want to see the image better, or somebody else may have turned it off because their computer is running slow. All right, so just a lot of things to just really configure on your system. Now that we know a little bit more, I encourage you to go into the preferences and explore on your own to see, what is going to jump off the page for you. Really experiment with them and just go back maybe every once or 2-3 weeks after you learn more and more about InDesign, because some of these things will become more relevant for you. All right, so pause the video, practice this, and we come back, we're going to learn how to export and package our document. Welcome, and welcome back. Here we are at the end of the class where we are going to learn about how to export and package and publish. So we finished our document, here we are, and we're ready to send it to the printer. We're ready to make it into a PDF, and we want to publish it on our website. We want to send out an email with our PDF. All kinds of great things we can do. Now, before we do anything, we need to make sure that everything is good to go. All right, we've talked about a few of those things and how we do that. So what we want to make sure of is that we got no errors. All right, so how can we even tell if we have errors at all? If you look down on the bottom, you will always see this pre-flight. Okay, so hopefully at this point, your eyes have been trained to always look down here to see like, hey, wait a second, do I have any problems? If I were to publish this right now, is my printer going to have problems? Is the quality going to come in? Is some of my text going to get cut off? You really want to be asking yourself these questions. And then the follow-up question, of course, is how do I fix it? What do I do? So InDesign is here to help. If I double click on this right now, it's going to take me to, guess what? My pre-flight panel telling me what my issues are. So you can see here as links, I have 57 missing links. Oh my God, that's going to take me forever. Some of you may see something that says like text and overset text. You're going to see that when you have like the little red plus sign. That's telling us like, hey, some of that text is like just not showing, right? Your text box is too small. So you got to resolve that, right? And you'll figure out ways to do that. Maybe you add on a new page. Maybe you make the line spacing a little more narrow. Maybe you make your images smaller. Lots of different ways to deal with that. But we're going to focus on this part here because we need to make sure that our links, i.e. in this case, our images, are all set up ready to go and ready to be packaged with our file. Because when we send it to our printer needs to see the actual images, so then therefore they can print it in the best, highest quality possible. All right, so when we package it, it's going to come with our images. You'll see them in just a little bit. So you can see again, I have all these missing links. Oh, what am I going to do? No problem. Let's go over here to our links panel. And if you don't have this here, you can always go over here to Window and then Links, and then bam, there you are. There's all of our links. And this is a little review from one of our previous lessons of what do we do? How do we relink these to make it so we can ensure that everything's going to come in accordingly. So let me go to like my bouquet right here, and you'll see here is this little guy right there to relink. Okay, so I click on that, and it's going to take me to my file explorer, whatever yours is, and you'll kind of need to know more or less where this image lives. Right, so it's going to help you relink it to where they've been moved to because your coworker moved it or renamed it or something like that. You're just relinking it because it somehow got lost. So what I'm going to do before I even click on this is I'm going to make sure that this is unchecked right here, this show import options, and this in fact is checked right here, this search for missing links in this folder. Okay, because when I find Bouquet, I also want to find all of Bouquet's friends, right? All these guys here, the tulip and the TOC, et cetera, et cetera. So let's uncheck show import options. Don't really need that. So I'm going to keep going, keep going. Oh, there's Bouquet. Yep, and it looks just like what I'm looking for. I can see that. And then just simply double click on it. And then watch this, relink, relink. And it's doing the other thing I asked it to do. Waiting for it. And then what? Search this link. Oh my God, it found and relinked 56 missing links. Oh my God, that is amazing. Click OK. Wait for it. No more pesky question marks. And get out of here. No errors. That is amazing. Oh my God, I'm so happy. And I'm ready to go. All right, so definitely check that out. Now, what are the next steps for us to do? If I'm just making this into a PDF, let's just see what our steps are here. I'm going to go over here to my export options here. I click on File, Export, and you can see this is going to come up. What do you want to save this as? Okay, so totally up to you. I'm just going to go ahead and save this as a PDF, print, right? And then I'll just call this Final HP Doc. That's amazing. I click on Save. And now, whoa, thought I was done. A lot more stuff comes up here. A lot more stuff comes up here. Basically asking me, what kind of quality do you want it to do? When you open it up into a PDF, how do you want it to show up, right? Compression levels, there's a million things you can change here. So let's just go over like 500,000 of these, okay? So you can see here my compatibility, right? What compatibility do you want it to be in? I usually just change the highest, right? I usually choose just the highest, okay? That's great. And then you'll see here, okay, so what page ranges do I want to save it in? Okay, so I can just do all my pages or only certain pages. Absolutely can do that. You'll also notice that there is a viewing section here of when I create my PDF, how do you want it to be shown? Do you want it to just fit the page? You want it to be certain percentages? Things like that. So when somebody does open it up, how do you want it to view? Because maybe you want it to be kind of open up like a book. Maybe you want it to kind of fit perfectly. However you want to do that, you have that option to do that. I'll notice here's also full screen mode. All right. And then in the future, you may be working with bookmarks and hyperlinks, right? And a few of these other things, right? And in our advanced class, we do get into hyperlinks and bookmarks. So I strongly encourage you to go there after this to learn some more. But you can see if you're working with those, you can just say, yes, I want those as well. Now let's go over to here to compression. And you can see compression is typically going to be about images. When you have like big fat images, you might want to actually compress them, right? Because it's like, oh, this is going to be emailed to everybody. I want to compress them. So you can see here's a section for color images. Here's a section for grayscale images, monochrome images, okay? And here's the option for, well, what kind of like bicubic downsampling do you want to do, or whatever you want to do here for images above a certain amount of PPI for all of these, for color, grayscale, etc. So if something is very, very large, you just want to downsample it, okay? And you'll see here also, here's some options for compression, image quality, etc. So you'll know what is right for you. Maybe you don't want to do anything at all, so maybe you just leave it be. Now let's go over here to our marks and bleeds. In our first lesson, we did talk about all the different marks, right? And all of our slugs and everything like that, saying that, hey, this is where information is going to go for your printer and for yourself, maybe even, that you might want these things showing up here. So if I say all printers marks, all these things will show up. And it's just information, right? You might not want to print it, so it'll probably get sliced off if it's just like an 8.5 by 11, but you might need that information just for, proofs and things like that. All right. Here's all my document bleed settings. Okay. So again, you might be setting it to be, as I suggested, the 0.125. Again, totally up to you. And then if you want to include this in there as you're printing it, please go ahead and do that. All right. Let's take a look at a few other things. If you are working with any kind of like color conversion, you'll probably know when the time comes that you are doing that, right? So You might be converting it from CMYK to RGB and vice versa. This is going to be the place for you to do it. And we'll skip this part for now. And we're going to go over here to security. Very, very important, because you might want to password protect your document. So very simply, require a password to open the document. Great, I could do that and just type in your password. And then here is use a password to restrict printing or editing or other tasks. So absolutely, you can do that. And then you have a whole bunch of other options here in terms of what you're going to allow to have happen. All right, so this could also be something that you do in an advanced class, like we're going to learn about how to create forms and a few other interactive things. So you might want to be able to do that. I'm going to keep mine as is for right now. And it's going to give me a nice little summary of what I've done. I can review this if I want to. I can save the summary. It'll give me a nice little output of that. All right. Now, you'll notice on the bottom is this Save Preset. You'll also notice up on top, there is this Adobe PDF preset, and it says that I have a high quality print preset that's been modified. Okay, so when you first start, when you do this, there is a preset that you may be starting with that you may just love, and it could be any one of these that you're working with. Okay, so notice I modified what they first gave me, but I could go back to the original, and it's going to go back to what was the pre-modified one. And you'll also see here is press quality, which is very, very high quality. Here's smallest file size, which is going to compress those images for you. Okay, and then these are ones that I've actually done in the past that are presets that I named these. Okay, you probably will not have these. All right, so for our purposes, we did do some modifications. So let's save this because I might want to use this over and over and over again. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to call this DCHP long doc. Settings, great. I click OK. And then I'm just going to simply say export because I am now ready to rock and roll with this. And you'll see over here in the upper right here, very subtly, that this is just exporting. It's doing its thing. It's got to wait for it. You can see when you click on it, it gives you the percentage and the status of what's happening. Okay. And that, in fact, has been saved. So let's verify where that was saved, and we'll be able to open it up into PDF. So I go back into the file where I saved it. There it is, final HP doc. I click on that to open it up, and there it is, looking very pretty, exactly how I planned it out to be. That's great. Let's go ahead and bring this down a little bit. I can see everything there. Fantastic. Looks amazing. So this has now been saved as a PDF. Okay, we have not packaged it yet. Technically speaking, we just saved this as a PDF. So maybe you are done and that is all you need to do with this exercise. But there's going to be times when you need to package your content because you're going to send it to a printer. So if I click on File, I'm going to come way down to the bottom. I'm going to say Package. And you'll see here, it's going to give me a little summary of like how many fonts I'm using, all this stuff's here. If you want to use that, you can even choose this box to say Create Printing Instructions. We'll do that in just a minute. Okay, click on font. You'll be able to see all the fonts you're using. Very much like just information at this point, because at this point, presumably, you have cleaned up everything. You've looked at your errors and you said, okay, you know what? There's no font issues here. There's no link issues here. There's no overset text issues here. I click on that. Okay, so no issues here. Okay, that looks amazing. And if you're seeing too much stuff here, you can say show problems only, right? And it'll show you maybe what the problems are. Okay, and then you can see here is all my colors. Okay, nothing too fancy here, right? At this point, we're actually pretty good. So I click on Package. I'm going to save it. And then here are my instructions. Kind of cool, right? So I can say, all right, here is me. All right, and then there we are. Here's my address. Okay, and then put in my phone number, very important, right? Because you might want to have people contact you, right? So Dave at sftech.com. Okay, instructions, contact me if there are any issues. Click on continue. And now, this is very interesting because what it's going to allow me to do is now not only package this ready to go, but I can package it based off of, guess what? One of my settings that I just saved for my PDF savings, or I can actually do it as any one of these also if I want to. So it's linking up to the last thing I just showed you. Even though that was a PDF, it's also now packaging it, and I can choose those same preset settings that I saved from earlier and apply them here as I'm doing this. Okay? And then you'll want to just kind of pick and choose some of these things as well, include fonts and links from hidden and non-printing content. Probably not necessary. Okay, copy linked graphics. Yep, you want to do all that good stuff there. Okay, you're good to go. You could certainly choose your instructions if you want to kind of replay them to see if you've done them right. And then make sure you know exactly where you're saving it. So I'm going to go right back to my folder, go back into here, and then click on package. And then this is basically a message about some copyright stuff. So I'm going to say don't show again and click OK. And you can see, bam, it's packaging, creating the PDF, an InDesign file. It's putting everything together. So my printer has everything they need to see and publish my content without any issues. And hopefully they're not going to call me, but if they want to call me, they got my instructions that they can contact me anytime. Okay, so let's now go ahead and check out that folder. And we will see I now have a new folder living inside of the folder that I just put it inside of. And there it is, 03 HP long dot class folder. That's great. I open that up and you'll be able to see, wonderful, there is everything. Here are my instructions. Here's my InDesign file. Here's my PDF. Here are my links. Wait, we talked about links, didn't we? I click on that and guess what? Oh, that's why that was so important, because my printer needed to see all of those, right? They need to actually run with them. And then when they do print it out, the printer is actually reading these things and feeding into it, okay? And then here's all my fonts. In case my printer does not have my fonts, now they do, okay? So I've now said, hey, you can have this font library. I don't care, all right? So let's come back to InDesign. Really kind of digest everything we did here, really understanding the processes, the importance of every step in the way, all the way from going from pre-flighting, looking at whether all of your links are set up, you have any overset text. If you don't have the right fonts, by the way, you can always go to type and you can say, find your fonts, okay, if necessary. You can see, you can get your fonts if necessary from here. And of course, you can do it directly from the pre-flight if you need to. And all the things that we did in terms of our PDF presets for quality, for security, for how you want your PDF to be shown. Okay, so many different variables to keep in mind when you're saving as a PDF, and also notice how that overlaps when you're packaging it and you're sending it to the printer. Okay, so again, pause the video, make sure you get this. You can either use our files here or use one of your own, but this is something you're all invariably going to be working with. Okay, so practice up, have fun, and good luck. Thank you for watching, everyone. This concludes our Intro to InDesign class. Now, we covered a lot in this class. We learned how to create documents from scratch, drawing, manipulating, and coloring shapes, how to place and enhance images, work with frames, strokes, and layers. We also covered object effects and how to save and implement object styles. You also learned how to work with all of the amazing typographical features that InDesign has to offer, including how to save both paragraph and character styles. And at this point, you should be comfortable with working with master pages, and finally, how to publish and package your documents. Now, there's a lot more to InDesign to learn, so please check out our other video on Advanced InDesign, where we tackle even more complex features that this amazing program has to offer. Thank you again, and hope to see you in the next class.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget we also offer live classes in Office applications, professional development, and private training. Visit learnit.com for more details. Please remember to like and subscribe and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for choosing Learnit.